This is a first in a series of videos, and it's actually a course. It's a course I'm building out, and I sort of wanted this course to be an interactive system where you guys interact with me and ask me questions. So I make sure as I'm building out a course that I'm just not glibly going over topics or doing things and losing people. I know, over the years being in the IT industry for over now it's 22. I got in the IT industry in 1999. So I guess I'm going on 23 years of being in the IT industry and, purchasing books, which is how a lot of us learned back then. You'd go to a Borders or Barnes and Noble store and you go to the technology section and you pick up a few books of what you're interested in. And in my case, it was Visual Basic. SQL Server, even Access as a backend, and sit there and take a look at some of the books and take them home and read them. And there are sometimes whenever you were reading a book, and every once in a while you get a training DVD somewhere, and sometimes the instructor or the author would lose me. Perhaps I'm not the smartest guy out there, but there are some things that just seem to sort of glib over a topic or something, and it's like, now I'm stuck. So now if I'm wanting to follow along, let's say it was like learn VB in 24 hours. I mean, there were a bunch of series of books, so I'm not talking about any specific book, but that might be an example. And or learn Visual Basic in 28 days or 29 days, and I start to read it, and step 2, I got stuck, or something wasn't explained very well. Well, at that point, is the rest of the book even worth it? I mean, can I reach out to the guy and have him answer the question? Maybe, but maybe not. So this is going to be an interactive course, and if you guys have watched any of my live streams, you'll know that I go through the comments and bring you guys live here on the air. So here's the first comment. Okay, it looks like you're able to read it. Okay, so hi, love your tutorials. Well, thank you. I have learned a lot from your videos. That's awesome. Could you please do one apps with multiple inputs like text box, drop down attachments, and pin input control? Okay, so there's a follow-up comment perhaps here. I need to fetch all the data from a SharePoint list to PDF with attachments, images, and pin input. So could you please do that for us? Okay, so there might be a situation where we'll use that in this app that we're building together. And so if we come across a screen where we need to do that in this ticketing software, and I sort of need to show you guys that in order for us to do this for the app, I will go over it, okay? However, if this is like outside the scope of this app that we're building, I'm gonna recommend that you, I do have my screen up here. Let me show you. I've got a list of links that I wanna share with you guys today. One of them is a link, and I'm gonna paste this over here. Hopefully it allows me to paste the whole thing over there. Hopefully that link works for you guys. So this is a form. Now I did this in a live stream. If you go, in fact, I'm going to sort of size this down so you guys can see my screen a little better here. If you go over to my YouTube channel and go into playlists, okay, you will find, these are all the playlists that I've created, public playlists for you guys, so you guys can easily find things. Because if you go over here to videos, gee whiz, I think I've got maybe 75 to 80. And perhaps you're watching this video later, I might have even more. So I create these playlists so you guys can easily find things. Okay. And so there is one for live stream. Okay. So let me just go find that real quick. And I'm going to pause that. I don't want to play any videos here. So if I just go click on live streams, I'm going to click on that. And there is one here. I just wanted to show you guys so you know about this. I had this live stream where I said, I want to capture all the video ideas that you guys give me in the live streams and the Twitter or Facebook or whatever. I want to have a nice list. I'm like, why not create a Power App to do that? So that's what that's for. So I have 2 videos I did. Also something while we're on this screen, on this playlist for live streams, my very first live stream was a help service desk application. Okay, and what that was, it wasn't building one from scratch like we're going to do now. It was one, you guys might be familiar with this. This is actually an application template that Microsoft provides. And did you know help desk or ticketing systems are so popular that they provide 2 different ones? Okay, so Here's another one. You might have seen this. So perhaps they wanted to give a phone layout or a portrait layout, and they're completely different. Now they might deal with the same type of data, the same fields and tables and collections and that type of stuff, but they're really different looking. And so anyway, they're fairly old templates. And for example, I'm here. You notice there's not a data sources here on this side. So if you're familiar with Power Apps, you've got a data sources thing that's usually over here on the side. So let me bring up, here's my application template. Okay, so boom, data sources. So you should see all your data source, your collections and stuff. For some reason, because this is an older one, there's things that are different. So I go into a lot of that. And this particular template doesn't even work. If you open it up. So if you're here on the home screen and you're like, you click on more data sources, or if you click on home and there's more create options. If you click on that, you got all these options down here below. Okay, so there's the help desk. Okay, and let me go find the other one, service desk. So help desk, service desk. What's the difference? I think they're pretty much the same thing. So that's what we're going to build. And what we're going to do is I open both of these up as a reference. Okay, and just to get ideas, and because we're going to be defining the application here today. Okay, so I want to let you guys know about that. And my thoughts on this is these two applications. I got this one to work in that my very first live stream, and this one I haven't really messed with very much, but I can tell you it's not really how I would build a system. And I wanted to share with you from a perspective of a software developer who's worked with many technologies over the years, is how would I build this from scratch? Because if you just start from a template and you need to build something new, maybe a new screen or whatever, you may not actually go through all the fundamental steps that you need to actually construct that application. Because at some point you will need to construct an application from scratch or from a template. And when I say template, I'm talking about like my application shell. If you guys have been on my channel for long and follow me, you know that I always like to start from some type of a application shell or template that I create. I don't like to start with templates that have already been defined that I didn't build myself, such as these two. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to my talking points here. So it's the first in the series for an actual course. Now let me take you back to my video. And I want to I'm going to click back here and then back again. And I want to show you my playlist again. So I have a playlist here. Let me see here. Where is that at? I know it's here. It is yeah, my zero to hero. Okay. So this is just, I was trying to think of a name of this playlist. I called it zero to hero, and meaning that if this is for a course. So this video will be added to this playlist. Okay. And so I'm building out a course. So right now I'm making all these publicly available while the course is in development, because I'm trying to get as much feedback as possible, because I want to build the best course for you guys. So this will all be out here. So if you haven't watched these videos, you'll want to go through here and watch these. Okay. So some of this, there's no prerequisite that you need before watching this video, this live stream. But it sort of lays the groundwork for what we're going to do today. So we're going to touch on a lot of the topics that I've already touched on in the defining the application and gathering requirements. So we're just going to do that quickly together. And some of the stuff I go through here, things are going to be very nice and clean and sanitary as we think of these ideas ourselves. But a lot of times when I deal directly with clients and customers, as you talk to them, they have an idea for an app, or they know they need some manual process automated with an app. And it's not going to be very easy to digest and document. It's almost going to be like diary of the mouth. It's going to be disorganized. And what your role will be, unfortunately, is that you have to bring order to their chaos, because when you build an app, you're taking all this disorganized mess that they have in their business process, and you're bringing order to it. You're bringing in information. As you're a database developer, you're going to bring the data in, make sure it's in a nice, organize the data pretty much into a database. So anyway, so I wanted to mention that. Okay, so this is what we'll be doing today. So Okay, so something I will mention: the video may not be around for long. So this is a live stream of, obviously you're free to view it here, and you got all the other videos here. So this is a part of a course. If you go into this second video, this Power Apps course enrollment, let me provide that link just in case you guys want to watch it here. And it announces the course. Okay, so I'll put that in the link there in the chat. And then here is the student intake form. I'll zoom in on here so you can see what I'm selecting. Okay, so if you want to interact with me while building this course and provide feedback, and if you have questions and everything, you need to enroll in the course. Okay, and there is the link to sort of enroll for the course. And what that will eventually direct you to is my insiders group, where we can all sort of talk and ask questions and discuss. And you, we can. So if you guys have any issues as we're building this from week to week, right now my plans are to build out this course one weekend at a time. Probably Saturdays, sometimes Sundays. Depends on what my schedule's like, if I have any conflicts. But right now, I think 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturdays might be the best time. Of course, during the week I'm working, so that's the idea at this point. And so if you you do the course enrollment, and you get into the group, so you'll have access there. And I've actually posted over in the insiders group a link. So for example, if one of you want to be brought on, which I would really like, so I use a application called StreamYard. Allows me to stream all this to all the different platforms that I'm streaming to today. And it would allow me to bring on a guest, and you can share your screen with me if you're having a problem, and I can help work you through that issue. And chances are there's probably a few other dozen people out there having the same problem. So I want to address all of those things, and I don't want to lose anyone. Okay. So if you want to always have access to this, what you want to do is you want to do that student enrollment form and get into the group. Okay. So this is a course where you're going to do all the work. Okay. So this is going to be different than probably any of the other content that I've done so far. And what the content that I've done so far is like, oh, hey guys, watch me do this. Hey guys, watch me do that. But we all learn by doing. So I want you guys to follow along. Okay. So, and in this course, there's going to be homework and lessons. And so I'm going to be sort of tracking that. So anyway, so the pertinent links, so I do have these links. Let me see which ones I have not shared yet. So you know how to get to my channel playlist, and I believe I've shared the form. In fact, let me just show you what this looks like. If you have any ideas for any videos whatsoever, maybe even a video idea or a Power Apps idea to be put into this application, you can either share it in the chat here, leave it in a comment in this video if you're not watching the live, so you're watching it afterwards. But this is the MS form that I have here, where you guys can sort of provide your input. Now this goes into a SharePoint list, and then I built out a little Power App where I can manage all this stuff, and I can sort it, and I can figure out what I'm going to, which one I'm going to do next. Okay. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to recommend, I want you guys to follow along with me. Okay. So hopefully you have two screens. If you don't have two screens, maybe make this YouTube video smaller, or have a situation where you hit Alt Tab on your keyboard if you're using a Windows machine. Unfortunately, I'm not a Mac or an Apple user, so I don't know what you would do to switch between screens there. Perhaps somebody in the chat here knows how to do that. On a Mac, you could share it. But I want you to have, okay, if you have Word or Google Docs, I want you to create a document similar to what I'm going to show you here in a moment. Okay. So make sure you've got a word processor up. Make sure you have Power Apps up. Okay. And we're going to be doing all these steps together. Okay. Now, initially, and this is, I'm going to share with you guys what I do in real life. Okay. So if somebody comes to me, they need an application. I'm not just going to fire up Power Apps and just start creating screens and all kinds of stuff. I'm going to meet with them, and I'm going to be taking notes. Sometimes written down if I don't have my laptop with me, but hopefully I would, if it's a virtual machine, it's very easy to, have the chat on one screen and type up on another screen. And so this is what you want to do in real life, So if you don't have a Power Apps job, I'd like to prepare you for what you should be doing, or give you an idea of what you will want to do whenever you do have a job, or you have a gig, or you're freelancing. Okay, so I'm going to approach it from that perspective. Okay. All right. So make sure you got the word processing document open. Okay. So question is, should we use a template or not? Now, when I say template in this context, let me just underline this template. What do I mean by template? Well, I have got a whole playlist. If you're not familiar with my content so far, maybe you're new to my channel. Okay, so I have a playlist called Power Apps: How to Create Your Own Template. Okay, and this content is free. Okay, and I show you video by video how to create. So you could create your own app. Let's just call it an application shell for now, because sometimes you use the word template, people confuse what I'm talking about with what these things are. And I go in and talk about that in those videos. Okay. So this is the application shell. So one of my secrets to success with Power Apps, and I've learned this with traditional development, is that you never start from scratch. You don't. I mean, maybe if you're absolutely brand new, you'll have to, but you want to have a good starting point. So a lot of times when you create your second, your third, and your fourth application, a lot of times you're going back to your previous application where you have the coolest features and stuff, bringing it in and probably deleting screens and ripping out things that you don't need for your current project. Well, instead of doing that, having to rip things out, things breaking, having you fix things before you can actually start using it, what I recommend is creating your own application template, or I'm sorry, your own application shell. Okay. And so an application shell would have a lot of different features. Now, if you go out to my website is Power Apps tutorial.com. So let's check that out, because I have a whole blog post of what I recommend that you have in an application shell. Okay. So I'll go in here. And of course, this is the first video in that series. So here's all dynamic theming, a weight spinner, an application. So these are all things that you should have. Okay. A nav, some type of menu system, security groups. We're going to need some security groups, a debug feature. I've got a lot of code in my application shell in the app on start. Okay. Even on screen on visibles, I have stuff there to sort of log and track what users are doing. And also deep linking. So I won't go into that. If you want to go and read this article, you're more than welcome to, but I'm not going to spend any time going over that again. I did in these videos here. But this playlist will take you through doing all this. So, and what I explain in that is that I have my own application shell, and I'll show it to you here. And it saves me tons of time. It probably saves me a good 30% of time as I'm building a new application. And I've got all this dynamic theming and cool stuff built in. And I show you how to do this for yourself. You don't have to pay anything. Now, I sell this one that I use all the time. But you don't have to. Okay, you could go out there and build it for free, because I show you all the steps involved. Okay, but if your project is due tomorrow, or you have to make progress, you have to show your manager, your customer, client something tomorrow, feel free to check mine out and save yourself some time. So eventually this will be a paid course. Okay, so my dream is to not have to work a day job during the week, so that I could create more content for you guys, and actually a lot of free content for you guys. In order for me to do that, eventually I'm going to have to create a course and sell it, or do some way to make money, so I can replace those jobs, and then have much more time to create content for you guys, and to spend more time doing group tutoring like this. The group tutoring is more happening in the Facebook group. Okay, so it's gonna if I eventually charge for a course like this, it's gonna free me up to create more content for you guys. So it's really a win-win situation. And let's see here, what else did I want to mention? Let me go back to my talking points here. Okay, so right now I provide my template out there. If you want to purchase it's out there. However, if you sign up for the course and purchase the course, and this is going to be later down the road, you'll find more about it in the insiders group. this template will actually be provided for you. Okay. So if you're in the course, you're going to have this, so you don't have to build it if you don't want to, but you can. Okay. So now that I've mentioned that, again, I want to ask you guys to follow along and do this work with me. Okay. So again, I don't want this to be, hey, watch me do this, So I'm going to go into the comment section and just see what's going on here. So I've got Flavio, hopefully I pronounced that right. Hello from Brazil. Very good. Hello, Brazilian. Thanks for the comment. Well, you're welcome. I have a question. How can I prevent users from create Power Apps and publish it even if they have a license? Okay. So Amanda, thanks for the question. So with questions like this that perhaps don't have to do with this particular video, I'll spend maybe just a little bit of time, and I won't go into it too depth. I don't want to spend too much time, but I want to give you guys the benefit. You guys are here live with me, so I'm going to try to answer these. Any questions and comments that come up, I'm going to try to answer those. Okay. So Amanda, you're probably working in IT and you have users in the organization that are out there and creating a bunch of apps and you want to lock them down. To be honest, what you need to do is take away the license if you can. So if you're an administrator of your organization or IT works in IT, you might have the access, you should have the access to do that, right? So that would be the simple thing. But what your question is, how can you prevent them from even if they have a license? So perhaps you don't have access to do that. In a tenant in your environment at work, what is created by default is a default environment. Okay, so let me show you an example here. You've got environment. So there's a nice US default. Okay, and then I created another environment for a developer. Okay, so what you'd want to do is what Microsoft recommends is that you rename this default tenant to just personal work. Okay, and you as an administrator in IT, you should be able to go in, and if you're telling the users like, hey, I don't want you to do that, you could take over that application, change ownership, take it away. Or you need to work with them, say, hey, this is against policy. You can do your own personal work or whatever your policy is. But what I would suggest is that you create a real production environment for real Power Apps in your organization. And then you would need to give those people specific permissions in that production environment in which they could do stuff like create an app. Okay. If you're an app creator, of course, you can share it, publish it. So, I think the default environment is problematic for a lot of organizations in IT. They don't want people to go hog wild and create a bunch of apps. But also realize Power Apps really doesn't give you any more power than what they already had. There's an exception to that, which is some connections like to SQL Server and such. Okay. And if you create a production environment, you can really lock that down. Okay. So perhaps the simple answer is to create separate environments for different purposes. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Luz or Louise, hello, Brazilian. Okay, cool. Thanks for joining us, guys. Flavio. All right, so I've got some of my links here, and Geraldo says hello, Geraldo. Thanks for joining. And Vladimir, hi everyone, nice to be here. It's very nice to have you guys. All right, so Oscar, this is great. Thank you. You're welcome. There's a Facebook user. Whoever hasn't purchased Darren's template, what are you waiting for? It's amazing. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So right now it's actually a low price. I don't like to mention prices on the air and a live because they might actually go up, and I don't want anybody to get upset. But if you follow my links, if you're interested in it, I could just provide the link for you guys if you guys are interested. Now, if you have purchased my template and in the future, like, well, I want to sign up for this course and the template is provided in the course, I'll give you a discount. Okay, so it's all going to make sense, and I'll probably provide a very generous discount. Okay, so let me go in here and let me show you. Well, if you look at my videos, and it's probably one of my first videos, and I go to oldest. So here we go. It's my oldest template. It's called Power Apps App Template, and it was from 11 months ago. If you click on it, um, it just sort of goes through all the features, and I will. That's actually not the link I want to show you. But if you go in here, there is a link here. Okay. And I call it the Jumpstart Kit. Okay. It's more of a marketing um, name for it, the Jumpstart Kit, rather than calling it a template, which confuses people. Okay. So you can check that out if you're interested. I definitely don't want to be shoving down any product or service down anybody's throat here, but I wanted to share it with you guys if you're interested. Okay. So who else? So Nicole says, awesome. Well, thanks, Nicole. Your name looks familiar there. All right, let's do this. Yeah, very good. Data is King says, awesome. Hello from New Jersey. Hello, Jose. All right, and then more. Okay, so I'm caught up on the comments. I want to make sure that this is interactive here. Okay, so let's go into our word processing document here, and these are the different steps. Okay, when you're working on an application, there's something called let me type it up here. So like I have a whiteboard or a chalkboard and I'm a teacher and I'm writing on the board, right? Software development life cycle. And a lot of times this is called the SDL. And sometimes there's another word in there people use. It's not coming to my mind right away. So sometimes it's called SDL, sometimes it's called there's another letter in there. But anyway, so this is pretty much the whole step process that you'll deal with when building an application. So we'll need to find the project. And I sort of break these down. Some people say, oh, this is really the same thing. And some people just say these first three steps and just say plan. But I think it's important to make some distinctions here. Okay, so defining the project. So if you go back over to my playlist here, okay, I'll click on the channel name and I'll click on playlists. And I'm going to go back over to my Zero to Hero, of course. I don't want to play that. Let me bring that up. Okay, here we go. If you want to know more about defining the project, you want to watch this video. It's only 15 minutes, and then I've got a 19-minute video here about gathering requirements, okay? So I'm going to sort of glib over that. I don't want to focus on it too much if I already have a video out here that you guys can watch, okay? But I go over a lot of really good points, and if you look at the thumbnail, it says avoid Power Apps disaster. If you guys don't start your application right, you could end up with what I would call a disaster, where you're wasting time and money. The project gets canceled. You lose the client. If you're a freelancer on Fiverr, your project could get canceled. You could have spent months on the project, and the customer's upset, and they ask for it to whole be canceled, and then perhaps you don't get any money at all. Oh my goodness, gee whiz! Talk about a disaster if you don't do things right at the beginning. Okay, so that's the pain that I want to save you guys from. Okay, so let's go through these. So define the project, gather requirements. So in the video over there on the playlist where I gather requirements, you sort of go through what the user, the customer, the client has given you, what you want to build. And then after you have all this information, and these are two things that you do with the customer, the client, okay, and they're generally pretty chaotic and they're not very organized. And so you have to a lot of times slow down people, your customers and clients, slow them down, stop them, ask more and more questions. And you get at the information that you really need to plan this out. And if you don't do that later on the application, they're like, oh, after you show them the first screen or you deliver the application, like, oh, well, that's not what I meant at all. Or, oh, you forgot to include this and that because we have the manual. I told you about the manual process, right? And that manual process maybe they didn't go to and you didn't ask about. Oh my goodness, that would be a huge disaster. Okay. And a lot of times customers and clients are looking for a flat rate. Oh, Power Apps, right? You're like, yeah, okay. Like, okay, how much would it take to build a ticketing system? Oh, about a month maybe, or 2 weeks, and you give it to them, and it's maybe not what they wanted. You didn't manage their expectations. Here's a question: do you have a sample contract that you could share when signing up a client? Would have to adjust for liabilities. Absolutely. So I do some contracting on Fiverr, and they sort of take care of a lot of that. Now, Fiverr does take 20% on both sides. So it doesn't come without a cost, but they sort of do all my sales and marketing. Well, I do the sales because they contact me, and then I have to sort of sell them on using me. But the whole marketing and getting leads. But as far as in the contract, yes, if you're not doing something like Fiverr or using something like Upwork or freelancer.com, yeah, you'd absolutely want to work on a contract and have a good contract template. And if I do have one, that's probably a good thing to include in this course. I don't have one prepared right now, but perhaps I can include a sample one. And what I would be doing is sharing that in the Insiders Facebook group. So again, if you haven't done the student enrollment for this course, make sure look in the links here, either in the video description or this chat, and you'll find it in join, because that's where it would be. If I include anything, all the links will be there. Okay. And then can you do with attachments and pin input? Okay. So Mano, I did see your comments at the beginning. I did answer that a little bit. So if you rewind all the way to the beginning, you'll hear my response to that, because I think that might be exactly what you're talking about, is the questions that you asked that was right before the live stream. Okay. So very good. Um, okay. So then designing the application. Uh, So you actually need to plan out and design the screens. What are the screens going to look like? How is the user going to navigate throughout the application? And if you gather the requirements right, you need to know, you need to define all the roles in the application. So for a ticketing system, what type of roles would we have? We need the people that need to enter tickets, enter a request, like, hey, my laptop doesn't boot up. They need a screen to go to and enter that. And that screen would be different than the technicians that are actually doing the work, and they need to update the ticket, like, uh, on my way over to their office now to help them with their laptop. So they would have a different screen. And then you might have perhaps the IT department manager might want to monitor, so that would be a different role. So each of these roles will have different screens, and the screen layout would be different for each of those depending upon what they're trying to do. Okay, does that make sense? And then also in designing the application, you're also going to be, so let me put in here, um, these screens. And I'll put in here also um, database. I should say data source. I don't really like to call SharePoint a database. Sometimes people get upset because it's not really a database, and that's true. But sometimes SharePoint is all you have to work with. Now, I did a poll that you guys might find interesting here. Here on my channel, in the tabs across the top, if you go to my channel here, there is a tab called Community. If you've never checked it out, be sure to check it out. Sometimes you might see these things come up in your feed. So I try to keep up with you guys on this Community tab. So here, what data source do you use most in Power Apps? Okay, so I have 182 votes. So what do you think the top the top item is? Of course, it's SharePoint. So let's look at that. 70% of people that answer this poll said SharePoint. And that's probably because of the licensing, okay, more than likely. And perhaps that's what your IT department has given the people that are creating the Power Apps, or given you in order to create your Power Apps app is, okay, here's a SharePoint site. You can create a SharePoint list if you want. They're not going to necessarily give you access to a Dataverse or a SQL server. So sometimes it's harder to come by, okay? So perhaps that's why. So we're going to be using SharePoint just to make sure that most people can use this. And people that are building real apps, sometimes they still use SharePoint. And a lot of my clients that ask me for work, I can do work in Dataverse and SQL Server, but SharePoint doesn't require a premium license. And if you're talking about all your users in the organization, you might have hundreds or even thousands of users that your organization may not want to pay for that premium license for. Okay, so if you use SQL Server or Dataverse, you need that premium license. So you have to go to powerapps.com and look at the Microsoft pricing, because it might change in the future. But I think you're at least going to be paying 10 or $20 per user. That can add up quite a bit. I could make the case that, hey, it's worth it, for certain reasons, but for a lot of people, it may not be. Okay. So thought I'd mention that. Let's go back here. So you're going to plan out your data source. So you're going to plan out your database tables, your SharePoint list, all the field names. What are all the data types for those? Okay. And I mean, there's other things that you might need to define or design reports or other reports that the system needs. You might need to design all that out. You might want to do that in Power BI if you have any skills in Power BI. Now, I do a lot of the reports right there inside the application. I can show you how I do that. Um, and what the issue might be with building reports a lot of times is if you need to work with a lot of data, Power Apps at the most will only allow you to work with 2,000 records at once. They're within Power Apps. Now you can give your data source a delegable query that will give you a subset where you can work with. And a lot of times there really is no need to show the user 2,000 rows at once. I mean, let's get real, right? So you want to query the data source like, hey, just give me, the last month's records, and you're going to build a report based on the last month. Well, that's probably less than 2,000, unless you're dealing with an application that's got a lot of transactions. So in that case, I would probably steer you towards Power BI. Okay. But so yeah, you need to define the reports. You might define processes, so business processes, or workflows. Okay, so those could be used interchangeably, perhaps. Now, this might actually be Power Automate flows. Okay, I'll say might be, and here might be Power BI. Okay, you need to design all this stuff. Now, let me give you a little secret. We'll do in freelancing if you guys are interested in doing freelancing. Now, if you have a job, they're just going to give you a paycheck and they expect you to do the work and perform well and get your work done. And you're going to get a paycheck every week. It's very stable. You don't have to worry about, if you're freelancing though, they're going to want a time and a cost estimate. Somebody messages me on Fiverr. They want to know, can you do it? How much is it going to cost? How long will it take to deliver it? And in order for me to answer that question, I have to get all this information out. I could get the requirements and I could guess on how the screen should be laid out. But once you start showing people screens, they immediately want to start changing stuff every time. Every time. I'm sort of tempted to say almost every time, but my experience at every single project, you design something, there's always going to be some revision request. They're going to look at it. Once they see something, it's like the users or the application stakeholders, it's like they see the light. Now they understand, it's like, oh, and hopefully the response is, wow, I never thought about that. That's awesome. But there's always, hey, could you add a screen that does this and this? I really didn't tell you about that before. Yeah, a lot of times they won't even mention that they didn't tell you before. Um, but really, what I have to do, I like to give very good estimates, and I have to take a lot of time, even when I'm not being paid for it. People expect those estimates without paying for it, and you might spend a few hours getting all this together. So you have to be careful that you're not spending tons of time doing it because you're not getting paid for it in hopes that you're going to get the job. Okay. But these are all the steps that I have to do in order to create an estimate, and they may or may not accept. So at that point, the building the application, testing it, and when you test it, you need to show your users or stakeholders what it is you've come with as you're testing it, and get that feedback. And then, of course, you have deployment, and then a lot of times you have repeat. So a lot of this stuff is an iterative process, which means you're going to be repeating a lot of things. Okay, so as you're defining the project, you're gathering requirements, you might say, oh, hold on, we need to get more information about the project in general. Or as you're designing, you might go back and say, oh, hey, I need a follow-up gathering requirement session. So there's a little bit, it's not necessarily one big loop. It could be lots of smaller loops. So you could be building the application, maybe one or two screen at a time, and then you're testing and gathering feedback. And then you're going back to the next screen and doing that for a while. And maybe you might have phases to a project. You might have gone through the first phase and they talked about it in the requirements, but you haven't really gotten to that part. You say, okay, well, this is like the first phase. We're just going to do these first 3 screens, and this is going to be the first phase. And then later on, we're going to do the more screens. A lot of times projects break out like that. So there's an iterative process, and it doesn't always, it almost always is not one big loop. Okay. So I'm going to click on a, come here. Could you make this project plan available? Absolutely. Now, I will be making this available in the Facebook Insiders group. So if you want access to it, and I can't imagine, it's free to join the Insiders group. It's free to do the student intake form. Okay. But yes, I will make this available to you guys. Okay. So let me give you guys a little bit of history and what I realized this last week, which was I was developing this course, and I'm going to go over here to playlists, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. It's Zero to Hero. I was building this course, and inside the user group, so I've got homework to do. So after you watch this video, that you're supposed to do this lesson. So out of like 50 to 80 people in the group, only 8 people actually filled it out and did the work. And some of those, there really wasn't a lot of details. So I feel like I sort of failed in that respect, in that either I'm not making things interesting enough. I mean, there is an aspect, if you get something for free, you really don't value it. You know, if let's say somebody sold a course for $1,000, chances are a lot of people are actually going to do the work because they just spent a lot of money on it, and they're looking for a big result out of that, and they're not going to let that money to go to waste. So there's something to be said for that. If you give something away for free, so that is sort of in my mind. Well, this is just free stuff out here, so maybe people aren't going to do it. But what my idea was, I was going to help each of you build your own application, and it could be whatever you need to do for your job or whatever you're trying to do. Okay, but what I realized this week is not everybody has something in mind. Maybe they're just learning, so they don't work at a place. And what's the link? Let me get that for you. That link is, I'll share that again. Good. So after you fill out that form, it redirects you directly to the Facebook group. Okay, so after you fill that out, it will take you directly to that Facebook group, just FYI. Okay. All right. So where was I going with all this? So what I had a thought was, I'll create a smaller version. If you click on this Zero to Hero Power Apps in just 12 weeks, my idea was I was going to have 90 days or about 12 weeks and take anybody from a beginner level, completely new, or an intermediate person that just wants to get really serious, and take them from there, wherever you're at, all the way to the point where you're able to write apps. You're able to show people, you're able to get a job. You're able to get a job interview. You're able to get in there. And, some people, they want to know, what are some questions I might be asked in a job interview for Power Apps? Let me give you a little secret. If you don't have any samples of your work, you're going to be asked a lot of questions, because how else are they going to gauge if you know what you're doing, right? Out of any job interview I've had, or any gig I was trying to go get, I've never been asked, write a patch statement for me. Let me see if you can do a patch statement. I've never been quizzed about my knowledge. And, this is before even the channel as well. So, if people know about my channel, it's like, well, obviously, Power Apps, you're teaching stuff, and I don't know everything, but, I show them samples of my work, and I have a lot of samples of my work, and I can't make them all available out there. You know, because, some things have, company logos and stuff. Perhaps companies don't want their stuff out there. So I protect the privacy of my clients and companies I've worked for and stuff. So I don't like to share everything. But if it's like a job interview, it's like, hey, this is part of my portfolio. This is what I've done in the past. If you have an app that you build yourself, in this example, you're building a help desk application with me, and I'm here to, if you get stuck, to help you out. You can show that in a job interview. If you're trying to get a client, trying to land a freelancer gig, and you're like, hey, this is an application I wrote, and you should be able to explain anything out of it. Now, I've never been asked to explain anything, but I show so much samples of my work. They're just overwhelmed. They're like, oh, great. Here, shut up and take my money. Or they get excited because they can see that you do good work, and they know that you can do the job. So I've never been quizzed over that type of stuff. So in my In my opinion, I would recommend not trying to research questions and answers for interviews. You just need to have a good portfolio. And what I do is I have another YouTube channel just for my personal stuff. I'll just upload a little demo video of like just walking through and talking through my screens. Now, if you want an example of that, if you go in here, there is let me go back to my channel here. I have two samples of my applications that I've written for clients, and they had sample data, and it wasn't showing any really any company information. So here's a perhaps example. So if you do a search on my channel and type in example, you'll be able to find it. Okay, so you've got, I also have a playlist as well. So here's one, a checklist inspection app. So that one has gotten me, that was my first job out on Fiverr, got me tons of work. You know how much I charged for it? $99. It was very cheap, and I didn't want to. It was my first job. You don't have a portfolio or any reviews. You're not going to get any work. So I told the guy, I'm like, hey, I want to do this for you. I'm going to do it cheap, but I'm going to do a really good job, and I'm going to ask that you give me a review, an honest review, but please make it detailed. um, you know, and then I've got this inspection report generator. So that's an example of what you want to do. And if you don't have, I use software called Camtasia to record your screen and sort of step through and show your application. What you want to do is get, if you don't want to, Snagit is another an app that TechSmith makes. TechSmith is the name of the company that makes Camtasia and Snagit. I think Snagit's like $50. And then Camtasia might be like 200 or 300. If you don't want to pay for that, there is a free, there's a lot of free stuff out there. I think there might be a free one built into Windows. It has to do with like an Xbox, like if you're gaming or I don't know. But if you do a search for it, you can find it. There's one that I know about called Loom. That's Loom. And you can install that and record your screen. I think Apple might have a free screen recorder built into the OS. I don't know that for certain though. But yeah, you need to have a portfolio, some videos of apps that you've done. And a lot of times that gets you the job. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my talking points. Okay, so I'm done talking about this outline here. I'm going to sort of scan the comments here, make sure I'm keeping up with any questions or comments. All right, I'm going to scroll down. All right, so define the project. So we are building an application, and it is a help desk service application. So okay, so Facebook user says newer versions of PowerPoint can record your screen. Okay, very good. And what's great about PowerPoint, you just have like screenshots. So you could have like a screenshot of something of your app, and then have like a little video where you demo that screen. So that's also an idea. You can send them that PowerPoint, right? So that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that. All right, very good. Now, if you are on Facebook following this stream, there is a link probably in the description of the video. And if you click on it and authenticate yourself in some way, it should actually, if you want your name and your picture to show up in these comments, be sure to click on that link. Otherwise, I'll just call you a Facebook user. All right. All right, very good. So let's look at these other help desk ticketing systems. Okay. So this is the one that we got working in my very first live stream. Okay. So we've got all of our tickets. They've got little summary bits of information. So there's 18 tickets total. There's 8 new, 5 in progress, so on and so forth. Then you got a little, it's like tabs or something here on the side. It's probably a gallery. And if you click around, you'll see, for example, tickets on hold and all this type of stuff. Okay. So we'll take a look at these applications to get ideas. Now you're building this application yourself. Okay. So perhaps you want to build it a certain way. Perhaps you are really building this for your IT department or a facilities department or whatever you need. I would say almost any organization will need a system like this. Okay. So if your requirements differ from what I put down here, I think that's great. Okay. I'm hoping that 80 to 90% of all of our projects will be very similar, because a lot of ticketing systems are similar. You have a ticket and you have people that you need to assign to and that type of stuff. Okay. So what will we build here? Okay. So I'm going to go up here. So we need an app to manage requests, tasks, projects. Okay. etc. Now, somebody would put in there as well. What about bugs? Let's say you create an application and you want to keep track of bugs. Absolutely, bugs too. All right, um, if you guys have any ideas of what I need to add here in the document, please add it in the comments. Okay, as we're going along, because as you know, this isn't a spectator thing where you're just watching me do all the work. I want you guys to participate. Okay. All right. So I'll be watching the comments here. Okay. So an app. Okay. All right. So what is it? It's going to be used by IT. Definitely will fill that need for an IT department. Okay. Also others. Okay. Other type of departments, other applications, other use cases. Okay. So it needs to be generic enough to be used outside of IT. Okay. So that's definitely something I'm going to be building into mine. Okay. All right. So I do have a question or comment question. How to track how long each requests are open? That's a very good question. So that's actually something that we will cover. Okay. When we get there, but any record that you add in SharePoint, even Dataverse, and it will have a field called created, and that'll be a date time field. And so what you could say at any given moment, you can within Power Apps, you can say now, the now function is the current date and time, and you compare that with the date it was created, and that's how you get at that. So we'll be going over all that. Okay. All right. So used by IT department. Okay. So for each of these items, requests, tasks, projects. I'm going to underline those and also bugs. So these are things that are going to be tracked. Now, we could just call these things a generic name, like a request. Okay. Because a request, let's say it comes in as a bug. Okay, this is a bug. Is that a request? Not really. Well, you know what? It's a request to fix the bug, right? So we could just call this, say, generic name request. That's what we will call it generically. So if I say request, it could be an actual request like, hey, I need a new laptop or I need a new computer. A task could be, hey, reboot the server. A project might be build someone's computer. Maybe somebody needs a custom built system. So it's not really, I mean, you could call it a task, but if a task involves more than one step, perhaps what we need to think about is a request that's going to take a few days, a few weeks, maybe even a few months is a field that we might add to our database is um, the progress. How, is it 10% done? Is it halfway done? That type of thing. Okay. So data is king. A list of common issues and a drop down for the help desk analyst to pick from. That's a very good idea. And you know what? Data, something I just had an idea for, something that would go hand in hand with a ticketing system is a knowledge base. Okay. So, um, let's say somebody comes in and, I work for the state of Florida for an agency within the state of Florida. And one of the top requests that would come in is a password reset. Okay. And well, if they go in and try to enter like, oh, so you might have a drop down as you're saying here, boom, password request. And as they're about to hit the like type in the ticket, the request, like I need my password reset, I'm locked out and all this stuff. Perhaps it would actually look it up in a knowledge base. So it'd be a knowledge base sort of information that would pop up on the side and say, oh, in order to reset your password yourself, do these steps. Okay. So, but absolutely, we can have a common list of issues. Okay, so data, that is information that will come when we gather requirements. So that's actually going to be the next step. Okay, so when you go down here and gather requirements, we're going to talk more about that. But that is an excellent idea, and I want to thank you for sharing that. Okay, so what else are we going to say here? Requests need to be what needs to happen with the request? So the request is the central item in this whole application. So perhaps we'll do something. Well, we need to get into Power Apps today and do something, right? So that will be like the first and main thing we'll be looking at. Maybe we'll start on a screen to manage that. Okay. And then guys, you guys have homework and you have a week to complete it until, next Saturday or Sunday. You have a whole at least 7 days. Okay. To actually do the homework. So we'll talk about that. What all we're going to do before we get to the next live stream next weekend. And so I'll be doing it on my side and you guys will be doing it. And I'd like to bring some of you guys on and I want you guys to show me what you guys have built in that week. And I'll show you guys what I built. And then we'll talk about any type of issues that each of us has had. Okay. Have a way for multi-level approval for certain requests. Absolutely. That is a great point. And you know what? These templates out here that are provided, they don't have this. It's not very feature rich. There's not a lot of depth to these applications. But I want to build, and I want you guys to build an application that's got some depth, that is at least a meaty, 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 and also a medium-sized application, not something small and whatever. I want you guys to be able to go into your a job interview for Power Apps and like, hey, I wrote this application. Check this out. It's got 20 screens, and it's talking to 20 different tables, and it's doing this, and it's handling this, and people are like, wow, all right, when can you start? All right, so absolutely. So I'm gonna use this information as we go along here. Okay. So what needs to happen with requests? Okay. So things that I've thought about, I'm going to just type up here. And as you guys have things, and I'm trying to think, drop down help, let's pick from, okay. Okay. So I'm going to go with data is king. What you said last, common issues. I'm going to say, I don't know about categories. Okay. Let's say that categorized. Okay, requests need to be categorized. Okay, what type of category? Give me some examples of categories. Well, let's go over here. And we've got some screens here. So a request will have a status. Is it in progress? Is it on a hold? Well, I'd like to have more statuses than just that, to be honest. Okay, so let's see here, assigned to. So these are all the technicians. I don't like how they implemented that, so we'll tackle that later. So here's a ticket detail screen. So these are some of the things that we'll sort of look and add here. So we got priority area. Okay. So there'll be a category such as new equipment. Okay. So let me add that in our document. Okay. So is everybody typing in their document? I hope so. Because whenever a part of your portfolio should be a requirements document like this. It's like, listen, this is the requirements document that I worked from to build this application. That will actually impress a potential employer or a future client. Like, wow, okay, so this guy understands the full software development lifecycle. Okay, you're not just a Power Apps guy. You actually understand what it takes to build some software. Okay. So very good. Yes, sir. Very, very cool. Okay. So it needs to be categorized. Okay. So we'll also say, so these are some of my ideas. Okay. So the, the request needs to be input. Okay. So user needs to come to a screen and they need to input the request. Okay. So that might be obvious, but I'm just going to go out there and say it. It needs to be input into a screen because we need to build the screen for them to do that. Okay. So it needs to be assigned. It needs to be assigned to a technician or somebody that's going to do the work. Okay. And, if you need a good to-do system, this could be a system that you just use for yourself. And, talking about different uses for an application like this, my wife Nicole was talking to me. She does a lot of marketing work, and so she's got a lot of clients, and she has a lot of requests come in, and she's the only technician. She's the only one managing everything. Okay, so think about it. and the standpoint is like a one-person shop using this ticketing system, and you have all these external users that come in and need request stuff. So she could use this system. Now you might think to yourself, well, Power Apps is only for internal users, right? That's probably the big limitation for Canvas apps. Is it's only meant for internal users. You can add an external user, but it's a little bit of a pain and stuff, and you can't have anonymous users unless you're talking about portals. Okay. But we could create a Microsoft form like I did here for you guys, so you can input information into my SharePoint list. So you absolutely could have some external interaction with your system. Okay. So you can say, oh, if you want to ask me to, so they might shoot you an email. It's like, hey, thanks for the email, but if you wouldn't mind, go out to this link here, fill out my form, and that's going to give me all the information, and I'll get started on it here later this week or later today. And also, I used to. There was a while that I managed networks. I was trying to learn all kinds of interesting things. I was getting a little bored with programming, so therefore, a little while, I continue to do programming in some way, but I worked for this organization that they had all kinds of needs. So I managed their network. I managed all the hardware across this campus, and it was a school and it was a church, and they needed had all kinds of. They had people stop. I'd be walking to lunch, there on the campus, and people would stop me. Oh, hey, Darren, my laptop didn't boot up today. Blah blah blah. I'm like, hey, would you please fill out a ticket? And so I had a paper form that they go to the receptionist. They had a big stack of tickets, like just a little paper form I had them fill out. But eventually I created a little system where they could fill it out electronically. I created a little ASP.NET application that was sort of like this. Okay. And what that allows you to do, it allows you to handle the people that filled out the work, yesterday first. You work on the people that have been waiting the longest. You service those people first. And then you get to the people that just stopped you in the hallway 5 minutes ago. You get to those people. So you do them in order which the tickets came in. That would make sense, right? That would be fair. Now, there might be an exception to that. Okay. So you might have different priority levels. Okay. So here's a priority low. So let's see if we've got, we've got a priority page. So low, medium, high. Well, in our application, we might want to have 5 different priority levels. Maybe we might have like a high, like emergency. Have a priority called emergency. Then we have one like urgent, which you would think, emergency would be urgent, but maybe urgent, but not emergency would be like a level 4, not a level 5, So there's all kinds of things that we could build into this. So Drado says, prioritize. Absolutely. Absolutely. Data is King says, most of the time in my organization, the requests come in by phone. Absolutely. So in that case, so we'll get to that in a moment. So I've thought through a lot of this stuff, and we could have users, yeah, so I'll get to that. So you guys are bringing up great points, and I love it. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to go back through these comments and make sure I have it all as I'm filling this out. So they need to be assigned to a technician. But just going back to what I said about my wife using a system like this, is that she could manage all these tasks that are coming in and do them in a certain order, and you can actually have the Power Apps shoot off these notes. So I want to do this in this application. I think it would be an essential part of this application to send off email notifications to all these users that are requesting things like, hey, your ticket, the work on your ticket has been started. Okay. Or, hey, I've done this step and this needs to be, or, hey, your ticket's been resolved. Your password's been reset. Your laptop was delivered. And you're shooting off these emails. So, it could be a system that somebody like my wife could pretty much manage her whole business and her interactions with their clients. Almost like a little bit like a CRM in a way, in her case. Okay, so it needs to be assigned to a person. If you're the only one being assigned work, you can maybe have it default directly to you. Okay, all right. So so a request needs to be assigned. It needs to be transferred. Okay, so John Doe gets the ticket. He starts to work on, maybe he's a level 1 tech, and he realizes that he doesn't know how to fix the problem. So when I worked for the state of Florida, I had a lot of other organizations. You'll have different levels of technicians, and if the one guy can't handle it, it needs to be transferred to someone else. And you need to be able to track all those. So sometimes when I got a ticket, I went in there like, what's happened with this ticket? Okay, so the person had this request. It went to this person. They tried this. It didn't work. They transferred it to maybe the networking team or the level two staff, and they did these 3 steps and those didn't work. So now it saves me time. If I look at the history of a ticket, of a request, I'm like, okay, now I know I don't have to test this and this and this because all these other technicians have already looked at those problems. So now I know it's either one of these 2 problems that needs to be fixed, and it sort of speeds up the process. So everybody's working much more efficiently. So it does need to be transferred. So let's put in here a request needs to be tracked. Okay, so not only in that example I gave, it was transferred, but it was tracked. Every step of the way, more and more information is added to it. It's all date time stamped. Okay. So one thing that I brought up, I haven't typed it up here, communicated. Okay. So as things are, say somebody assigns a ticket to me. Well, yeah, I need to get some type of a notification. Maybe I'm not sitting there inside the ticketing application all day long. Okay. So perhaps I need to be shot an email and say, hey, this request has been assigned to you. Please take a look. uh, prioritize it, or get back to the customer, let them know how long you think it will take for you to get back to them. Okay, so there needs to be the communication needs to be integral with this system. Okay, also this is another good comment: submit on behalf of a user. Absolutely, we have an admin assistant submit tickets for the directors. Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to add these things to the requirements. Also, can notifications be sent via SMS? Yes, they can. Um, you could do it one of 2 ways. Either you could rely on a service and tie into that service, like a paid service that will be the endpoint, or the point in which the texts go out, or you can actually integrate it with a phone. So if you have a phone app, you can actually tie it in. I actually wrote a CMS system for the guy that did some auto detailing for my wife and I's cars. And I'm like, hey man, how are you managing all your customers? He's like, I just have them as contacts on my phone. I'm like, let me write an app for you, man. And so I negotiated, like, if you want to just detail our cars free, I'll write you a little app that will manage all your customers. So he exported his stuff and I imported it, and worked on the data and created a little app for him. And it's actually part of my portfolio. Really sort of proud of it, but it managed all that for him. So I actually built this in. So like he would have a schedule lined up of going to people's houses, cleaning their cars, detailing their cars. And the night before he would go, he would hit a button within my Power App that I built for him. It says, and it actually would pop up a little message that he'd want to send, like, hey, we're still on for tomorrow, right? Or hey, I'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Look forward to detailing your car, that type of thing. And you'd hit send. It would actually tie into the phone's SMS, so you didn't have to rely on some other system. Okay, I was trying to make it as cheap and as simple for him as possible. And then that would tie in, it would actually open up the app where he sent out notifications, would pre-populate that text. He would send the button to send the SMS. And then the customer, like, oh yeah, I almost forgot. Thanks for letting me know. I wouldn't have been home if you didn't remind me, that type of thing. So absolutely. I think that is a good point. Very good. So Data is King says tickets to be open for X amount of days in order to track metrics. Absolutely. So if we go over here and look at this. So in this system, they've got, boom, tickets older than 3 days. Yeah. So what have I'm imagining something like this, but just something that looks a lot better. Um, I don't know about you guys, and this might sound like a weird statement, but when I build Power Apps applications, I don't want them to look like a Power Apps application. Okay. So a lot of times in the Power Apps application, everything's just like big and blocky, and you got these big icons like the plus sign. You always see these little chevrons onto the side. So I always like to use something completely different. So when somebody opens up my application, it doesn't look like every other Power Apps application that perhaps somebody has seen. But absolutely, data is king. That's a very good idea. I'm going to go back over to my list. So it needs to be communicated. And what about managers that are managing other IT staff? Okay, so they might want to monitor. Okay, sort of data is king. What you were talking about there for metrics is we need to be able to monitor everything going on, and perhaps we want to know how many tickets that the system is handling, that my staff is handling. What's the average time for my technicians to close a request? How long does it take for them to do the work? And perhaps some technicians have a better average than others. And Perhaps you might want to give people raises based on how well they perform, and you would need that information, those metrics. Okay, all right. So monitored, and so those are the. So I'm trying to come up with any other ideas of things that need to happen for a request. So if you guys have any more ideas, please let me know. Who are we building this for? Okay, who are we building this for? Okay, well, you might say, well, it's going to be all users in my organization. Okay, that's a very generic, but is that true? Well, anybody in my organization could, and perhaps I run an office, and everybody works in the office, and they need a computer, or maybe they're out in the field and they need some type of mobile device, and so they all need a way to request things like more equipment, or they've got a problem with the equipment. So really, this it could be all users in the organization. Now, if you work for a large organization, and you build a system, I mean, if you build a little power app and it's only used by 5 people, it's not quite as impressive. If you build an app and you're like, hey, I worked for the state of Florida or Disney, and every single user in the organization used the app that I built. I think that sounds impressive. That something that you created and you put out there pretty much touched everybody, or everybody used what it is that you wrote, that you created, or your team created. A lot of times, as you build an app, I don't like to take all the credit for doing it. So if you're working on a job, you might have a project manager, you might have some other like testers and stuff that you also want to give credit to. Okay, so don't hog all the credit to yourself. But as far as talking about a portfolio, yeah, you want to say that everybody in the organization use your app is a big deal in my mind. Okay, so I'll use it, but let's get more specific on who. Okay, let me bring up, see here, role based. Data is king. That is exactly where I was going. What are all the roles that we need to account for in this application? Okay. Okay, so data is king. Data is king. I wish I knew your first name. All right. So we got, he says technicians. So let's identify, okay, roles. Boom, hit enter and tab. There we go. We got technicians. Okay. Customers. So anybody placing a request. IT managers. Very good. Etc. Okay. What are some others? Okay, so you have technicians actually doing the work. Let's say somebody needs a new laptop and it needs to be delivered. Well, perhaps in a lot of places I've worked, the IT department is separated in about 4 different divisions, or like sub departments. Okay, within that department. So a lot of times you have a service desk group. Okay, or a service desk person. They are the person answering the phones, looking at the emails coming in. Perhaps somebody stops by and like, this laptop doesn't work. Blah. They have somebody that it's like the first line of defense, the first line of support, and they're like, okay, let me take a look at that for you. Oh, your computer doesn't boot up, and they're calling you on the phone. Well, the service desk person might be like, okay, is it plugged in? Can you do this? Can you try that? And then if they can't solve it over the phone, what they need to do. So I'm going to actually enter them here. I'm going to say service desk staff. First line of support. Okay. Perhaps they fix the problem before a ticket's created. Okay. And I think somebody had mentioned that, over the phone. Okay. So over the phone, over email, or in person. I'm trying to think of any other way. Also, they might see a new ticket that comes in that the user, the customer here, actually, let me put in parentheses just to make sure this is all clear. Okay, requester, person requesting. Perhaps they went to the application and filled it out themselves. Okay, so that's like a fourth way that they could. I'm going to put the different ways that a person could come in. Okay, so request. Okay, so they handle requests through the Power App that we're building. Okay, It could be by phone. It could be by email. It could be by in person. Okay. So we want to think about all the ways in which this is going to work. So we're accounting for all these things. How is our application going to handle each of these situations? Okay. Um, okay. So service says staff, and I see another version. So also Victor. Victor says supervisors. Okay. And I'm going to put here IT managers, supervisors. Absolutely. And okay, so the question is, you guys are building this system, and your guys' system might be a little differently than mine. So you might want to separate those out more, Victor. They might have completely different roles. Perhaps perhaps a supervisor needs to do any type of approvals. Approvals, perhaps. And in parentheses, I'm going to say um, approving new equipment. Okay. Perhaps it's more like a supervisor. I'm going to make that a new item there. Okay. So IT managers might be monitoring monitoring employee performance and customer action. Here's an idea. What if we add something? A request needs to be reviewed and surveyed. So, in my experience, whenever a technician fills the order, fills the request, well, you know what happens is the system will email that customer and say, "Hey, how did the technician do? How satisfied were they? Did they actually solve your problem, or did they just try to close?" And that happens a lot, guys. If a technician they get tickets all the day, and it's like hot potato. They try to pass it on to somebody else. Like, here, you take it. Oh, they're just gonna close it, get rid of it. Like they can't hold any hot potatoes in their hands because their hands are burning. They get a request like, they just want to get rid of it. That's pretty much what their job is to get a ticket and fill it, whatever. But if they complete it, it will shoot off an email immediately. Maybe we'll create a Power Automate flow that will email that requester like, hey, how satisfied are you? Was the request actually filled? How was the technician friendly? There's all kinds of questions that we could ask in that survey. Okay, I'll put that in there. All right. So what else we have? So thank you, Victor, for that idea. It's given me even more ideas. Okay. So what else are we doing here? So I had here basic users submitting requests, service desk techs, technicians, managers, and app users. I think what I meant to say is app admin. Okay, so there is another role I always like to add in here, and I'm going to say app admins. Okay, so for example, somebody comes to me like, hey, we need this application written, and they're like the go-between between you and perhaps the users or whatever. Perhaps this is being written for a department, and you're working with them, and you would make them an application administrator because who's going to add all these users? Who's going to like out of all the users? I mean, the Power Apps application can tie into Office 365 and get a list of all the users, and so who's to say if Bob Smith is an IT manager or supervisor, what role are they in? Well, there needs to be an application administrator, and perhaps we by default we make the IT manager the head honcho over here. He'll be an app admin, okay, but there might be some other app admins. You might have us as the developer. We might make ourselves an app admin. Perhaps we have screens of our own that none of the other roles will need to use or shouldn't use, like adding user, assigning people permissions. Okay. Or as we're testing the application, we have a lot of test data that we've entered. Well, before we deploy that and it's being used, we probably need to remove all that test data. Okay. And we wouldn't want anybody just to be able to delete data. So we might create a little app admin screen so you could just delete a record or to fix a problem or some type of thing. And also in my application shell, I also create another role for myself as a developer, just in case there's anything that I need access to that is sort of above app admins if I need to fix some data or look at data or do something specific. And also, you know what? I've got in here another role called debuggers. Okay, somebody that's helping you troubleshoot. Troubleshooters. Okay. So for example, I'll go over here in my application template. And this is something I talk about while building out the application shell is I've got this little icon up here. This icon only appears for debug or troubleshooting users, testers. Okay. So I've got like controls that will show up only if they're a tester. So the tester, they won't see it automatic because a lot of it just makes the interface ugly. But let's say I've got a label here that shows the ID. So I'm editing a ticket and a ticket has an ID that's not normally displayed to the user while using the system. But a tester can go in there and tell me, hey, there's a bug going on. And I clicked on the debug thing here and the ID says 99. And that's the ID. And me as a developer, I'd say, okay, 99. I go in the database, I look up 99. I'm like, oh, well, that whole record is all messed up. It's all corrupted or something happened. Let me fix that. So there's all kinds of use cases for that for using debug user. And I go into that here in my blog entry on my website. Okay. All right, so going back here. So these are all the roles. So we've got quite a few roles, guys. So at the very least, when I build out applications, I at least know I've got basic users, we've got app admins, testers, and developers. So in my template, I have those 4 roles already built out and ready. And then, so that's all self-contained within the template, within the code. And eventually what you want to have is roles to be data-driven. So we'll probably use a SharePoint list to assign roles to users, okay? All right, so let's go on to when. When are we building? Of course, we're starting right now, right? Okay. So how long is it going to take you to complete this? Well, first of all, what are there any deadlines? Okay. That's a good question. So you're starting on it, and perhaps the people asking for the application, they're not answering that question, but you need to ask it because you can start on it. It's like, oh, I thought that would just take you like a week or two. It's like, no, this is actually a large application, might take a month, or I've got vacation. And you need to ask those questions, have those discussions, set expectations so nobody is upset with you later on, or the project doesn't get canceled on you, and a bunch of a disaster inevitably comes out of the project and is scrapped. So you want to talk about this type of stuff. What are the deadlines? What else? I would say for this type of application, if I was building this, perhaps you would say 2 weeks, maybe a month, depending upon. It really depends on the feedback that you get from the users. Some people, the users or stakeholders, the people asking you to write it, they might come back with all kinds of revisions. Now, if you agree to do it for a flat rate, you might say, hey, you didn't tell me that at the beginning. Let's just finish the app as is, and then we'll do revisions on the end and create a separate order for that, which a lot of times is what I do. If it's small and doesn't take much time, I'm like, I'll take care of it. I'll just do it. But in the case for us, this might take us, so we're doing this 1 week at a time. I'm giving you guys a full week to do all the homework, okay? So this might take us 2 or 3 months, and that might sound like a long time, but I'm trying to go at a good rate of speed. I'm not trying to rush things. I want to do this right. I want a very thorough course for you guys, and I want to like address any issues that you guys have, any problems that you get stuck with. So you might say, okay, well, so when maybe 2 weeks, 2 months, perhaps. Okay, you need to start thinking about that, but you also need to know of any deadlines coming up. Okay, where is it going to happen? Okay, so what I mean by where in the context of Power Apps is what environment is this going to be developed in? Okay, so we've touched on environments earlier in the live stream here, but okay, so these are my environments. Okay, so you got the default. I recommend that you don't do it in default, and if default's the only thing that you have to work with, then hey, go ahead, but you want to sort of segment things out if you can. So I'd create a development environment here. So what environment? Another big question that you want to be thinking about, if you're just a contractor. You don't work for the organization. You're a contractor. Okay. So, boom, are they going to give you credentials? Okay. This one's big. This could end up in a disaster right here. So my first application that I wrote, they're like, yeah, just send me the files when you're done. You know how much of a pain in the butt that was? You need to be working in the at least in that organization's environment, the Office 365 environment they have. So you need to ask, like, hey, I need a log on a password to go in here. And if they say that's not possible, just send us the files. Well, what happens after you deliver it and they have some feedback, they need you to fix a typo or change the name of a label. So you got to go in back into your environment, make the change, do an export, send it to them. And by the time it gets to them, they're like, oh, here's another change. Or you got a bug fix. And that gets really old really fast. And also, if you're not inside their environment, you don't have access to their SharePoint list. So guess what? You got to recreate all those SharePoint lists. You got to make sure you name all the SharePoint list names exactly the same. No misspellings. You got to think about spaces, not spaces. Oh, it's a huge mess, guys. You need to develop in that organization's environment. Now, there is an exception to that. So there is something to help you. Okay. Microsoft is helping us here, which is there is a thing called a solution. Okay. So here for, an application, let me go into my Power Apps environment. Down here is solutions. Um, Yeah. So you go into the solution, you can create a new solution. What you do is you package everything together. You've got your Canvas app. Um, so if I create a new solution, it's going to give me a little dialogue and I name it and everything. And then I say, okay, well, it's got this Canvas app or it's got multiple. So in this application I'm building out with you guys, I'm going to suggest that we at least have two applications, one for people working in the office and then one for the technicians that are out in the field. Now, if the technicians are in the office, they could just use the bigger the landscape, tablet or the browser version. But if they're out in the field, they just want to pull up their phone and say, okay, that was complete, or I went there and they didn't answer the door or whatever. Okay. Um, but to finish my thought here on the solutions, you add in all your Canvas apps and make up the solution. You want to enter in. If you're using solution, you're gonna have to use Dataverse. Okay. So well, let me correct myself there. In order to see this stuff, if you come to solutions and you don't have Dataverse installed in this environment, I don't think that you can use this. I believe that's been my experience. It's going to say, hey, you need to create a database. That doesn't mean you have to use Dataverse tables, perhaps, but you create a solution and you can create dynamic references to the connections like SharePoint lists, to the flows. Also, you need to include all your Power Automate flows, anything that the application uses. But what I recommend is if you're going to use solutions, what's going to be easiest for you is if you use the Dataverse tables, because it will actually include all the definitions for all your database tables. It will be there within a zip file. You export it as a zip file, and you can send them a zip file. And then if they have revision requests, they have some bug fixes they want fixed, you go in your environment, you fix whatever, and maybe once a week you send them the new zip file. Okay. So that's something you could do. If they absolutely refuse, you say, okay, well, let's do this with Dataverse. And they might be, oh, I don't want to pay for licensing. Okay, well, can you give me a log on and password so I can work in your environment? So that's just a bit of some wisdom and advice that I've learned by working with clients. Okay, so I do see a comment here. Comment is Geraldo, execution environment, Microsoft Teams, Power Apps. I think maybe what you're talking about is you can create power ups within Teams. I think it's called Project Oakdale before it came out. I don't know what they're calling. They're probably calling it power ups for Teams. And I haven't done any. Now you can create a Power Apps Canvas app and embed it within a team. You could do that. But perhaps what you're talking about is you can create something inside the environment. You can actually have a Dataverse database within Teams for that Teams to use. So that's sort of cool. And I've sort of played around with it, and I didn't like that environment. It seemed like a little bit of a watered down environment. Sort of like you can go into a SharePoint list. Let me show you here. Just gee whiz, let me come up with an example here. So this app that we did together on my first live stream, we've got view data sources. I'm trying to bring up SharePoint really quick here. edit data. I'm going to bring up a SharePoint list. Okay, ticket types. I could edit this. So if you click on one of these items here, you see this is a SharePoint edit screen. Well, I could go in here and say automation or integrate Power Apps, create an app. And it would allow me to create this little screen within Power using the Power Apps um, technology to actually modify this screen here. Sort of cool, but it's not your typical Canvas app. So Teams does have, Power Apps has like a Teams flavor of it, and it just seems like sort of watered down. So I don't recommend that. If you can avoid it. If you're working in an organization that sorry, this is the only thing you can do, then go with it. I mean, you're still going to be able to use a lot of the stuff that you learn, and you know, of Power Apps while doing that. There's just a lot of things that are a little bit of a pain. Okay, so I don't know if that answered your question, Geraldo, but that was. If I didn't, I'm not sure that I understand your question. So feel free to clarify that. Okay, let's go back over to our document. Okay, are they going to give you credentials? Absolutely. Okay, so why are we doing this? Okay, and this isn't a question of why, saying, should we really be doing this? I mean, perhaps you need to ask yourself, uh, you know, ask why in order to question if you should be doing it in the first place. But you know, what is their current system? Let me show you their current system. And let's say the current system, they bought it a few years ago and it's got tons more features. It would probably take you years to build another. I mean some of these ticketing systems that organizations buy are like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're massive. They do all kinds of things. um, you're going to look at that and say, there's no reason why we should build that. You already have a system. Like, yeah, but it's expensive. Well, if you want all those features, it's going to take me a year to build it, and I'd have to charge you quite a bit of money, that type of thing. So, but you need to be asking the whys, and this is to protect you from a project disaster. Okay, what else would we be asking why for? Really, to understand the needs. Okay, understand the problem. So every application addresses a problem. Okay, addresses something that needs to a problem that needs to be fixed, or there's some type of need there that needs to be filled, and you need to understand it. So you need to be asking the whys so you fully understand the scope of the project. Okay, all right. And let's see here, I've got, where is that? Here we go. Hey, if you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel, and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated. There's my commercial. Comment and leave a like. Okay, so moving on to gather requirements. So we're at the hour and a half mark. So how you guys feeling about all this? So what my idea was to get through this and at least create one screen or get started on one screen. Okay, so let's try to power through this. Okay, so as we've gone through this, I want to identify, when I tell people, if you go back over, and I don't want to regurgitate a lot too much of this, but I want to make sure that you guys have seen this. Let's go to zero to hero and go over here to requirements. Okay, I mean, look at this video. I've got, if you look at this whiteboard, I go into all these things. Now, the example that I used in this video is my work order system that I built for a garage. And that was a real world system for a garage that handled all the work happening inside that garage. Okay. So let me open this up in a new window and let me show you yet another playlist. Okay. Power Apps work order system application walkthrough. So there's 11 videos. Hey guys. So there's 11 videos stepping through this, and I pretty much built out a full application with you guys, and each of them are about an hour long. I mean, here's the third video is 5 minutes long, and it's answering somebody's question that they had in the comments from that first one. So some of these are shorter, some of them are long, like the shopping cart system when they're creating an order. So if you're familiar, if you want to go through, there's one video, this how to build a work order system for a garage. I sort of give an overview and then I talk about actually adding stuff to it. That would be a good video to look at, to sort of get an idea of exactly what I'm building. Unless you've been following me all along, and already understand this, but this gives a real world example. As you see, I've got, well, let me just make this full screen so you guys can see it better. Okay. So employees, jobs and work, and vehicles and customers. Okay. So out of everything that we've said so far, what I want to do is identify the nouns. Okay. So just looking through here, we have an application is needed. So an application is a noun. We're looking for nouns that the application will deal with or manage. Okay. Our application doesn't need to manage applications. Okay. So we would exclude that particular noun. Application is needed to manage requests. Okay. Requests, tasks, projects. Okay. But as we talked about before, requests, tasks, projects, these are all this different names for the same thing. Requests. Okay. Most of the time, this would be used by an IT department, but it should be generic enough to be used. Okay. Facilities department. Okay. But we're not managing departments, right? Requests items need to be input, assigned, tracked. So I also put up here, identify verbs. Okay. So verbs will tell you a little bit about the other aspects of the application, like the screens. Okay. So we know, put in here, need a request input screen. Okay. And as you deal with each of these entities, well, later on a different role will need to, we need to be able to do a request view screen. We need to have a request listing screen. What are the types of things that we need to do with requests? Well, we know that they need to be input, they need to be assigned. Okay, so the view, we make this a view / edit screen. So somebody in IT could go in here and assign it to somebody else. View, edit, okay. So it needs to be assigned, tracked, transferred, communicated, and monitored. Now going over all those verbs, it doesn't, in my mind, add any more screens than what we have there. Technicians, okay. Technicians should have their own mobile app. Okay, so I'm just reading through some of my notes here. So technician, that's a noun. Okay, a noun is a person, place, or thing or idea. And a verb denotes or communicates some type of action. Okay, like inputting, assigning, tracking. Okay, all right. So we have technicians. Technician. Over the years, I've typed more and more and relied on spell check. I don't really spell things all that great anymore. Technicians. There we go. Technicians. So does our application need to manage technicians? And I would say it does. Now, something that I talked about over here on this video is there were different user types. Over in the garage, you have technicians, the mechanics. You also had people in the office that interacted with a customer that took an order. Okay, well, that's a different type of employee. Okay, so perhaps what we'll have over here in our requirements is instead of being too specific. Now, the specificity. I can't think right now. The specification of what type of employee they are. Let's say, and even an employee, they don't necessarily have to be an employee. They could be a contractor. Okay, so let's just say staff. Okay, whether they're a technician, they're a manager. I mean, that will be a field type, and we would call that role type. Okay, now a person can have more than one role. Okay, what roles do they belong to? Okay, because even if you're a technician or even a manager within IT, well, you're still going to be a user who could fill out their say, the director of IT might need to have his password reset. Okay, and he'd fill out a ticket. So as you can see, anybody could be a regular user. So you can have people being more than one thing, like a debug user. Okay, so on and so forth. So as you're looking at the verbiage for our requirements, as we go through and read this stuff here, Okay, we're looking for nouns, but you need to say, okay, well, these nouns are really all the same thing. Okay, or these verbs will be performed on the same screen. Um, these are all different types of staff. Okay, all right, so let's go back down here and let's think about different things that our application needs to track. Okay, so requests, we have staff. I'm going to go over to these little example applications that we have here. Okay, let's look at ticket details here. So these, like the subject, the description, internal comments, that type of stuff, these are all going to be fields within this entity, within this database table or SharePoint list. Um, what about areas? Yeah, I mean, I would think that we would want our application to handle areas. Okay, let's go into areas and see what that is. Look at this. This particular system is actually, I'm impressed, it actually takes account for this, is what area. So we could have a facilities. Let's say you need a light bulb replaced above your cube, or the door just fell off the hinges. Who are you going to contact? Well, you're not going to put in an IT ticket. You're going to put in a facilities. Or let's say you were sexually harassed by your boss. You need to maybe enter a ticket for HR for them to handle. Okay. So let's say we want to handle, we'll call this request areas. Okay. Now that could be called like cost centers, perhaps, departments, cost centers, some type of a breakdown of completely different types of people that are going to be fixing these requests or filling these requests. Okay. So our application needs to manage that. Okay. So we'll need, okay, well, let's go down here, and we are still gathering requirements, but I'm going to go a little bit ahead. And so this screen, so this is where I talk about gathering requirements in another video. Now we're sort of getting into, so I might move that over here to design the application. So we're already specking out the screens. We also need to spec out the data tables or lists. Okay. So for each of these entities up here, we are going to have more than likely, not always, but more than likely, database tables. So we're going to have a requests table. We're going to have staff table. We might have request areas. Okay. And in order for people, we might have app admins that need to add a new department, such as, so we already have an IT department. Let's say we need to add in facilities. We need to add in HR. Well, so we need to go in here and say, well, we need a, I'm going to copy and paste that over there. Request areas. This would be a very simple type of screen. So if we go back over here, see how this is a simple type of a screen here. Now it's not allowing me to go in here and edit the areas. So I'm wondering where this gets it. Account names. So if I go in here and look for account names, account name types, let's see what we have here. Here we go, IT facilities and HR. Okay. It's simple. I mean, we have an ID, and this is a title. This is generic, like a unique identifier. And then we have the name of the areas. So this will be, go back over to my document here, request areas, management screen. So all on the screen, because it's so simple, it will list out all of the areas there, listing, like in a gallery. You might have, I'd like to stay away from forms if we can. Perhaps I'll create a whole video of reasons why I think you should avoid forms. If you guys have my free book, my free resource, a lot of my videos will have a link down to the free resource. I go into that, the book, the PDF the 10 things you must know about Power Apps before you develop your own applications. I go into why forms are not great. Yeah. All right. Data is king says list for status, priority, username, passwords. Absolutely. All right. So I'm going to keep that up. Okay. I want to finish off this request management. So we'll have one screen that will list it, view, edit. See, for here for requests is such a big thing. It's such a central part. There's going to be so many fields that we need to manage. We would have separate screens for different aspects of that. But this would be for, I might say for, if I break this down by the different roles, all users, or say listeners. Okay, we might have these three. Um, Now that's probably not going to work out for me well to break that down because some of them are in different roles. Okay, so I want a customer to be able to input and view their own records, but I don't want them to. I mean, they can edit the request maybe, but I don't want them editing any others, and they don't need to be looking at anybody else's tickets or anything. Okay, so I won't break that down by roles. Okay, so but this will be more like an app. This will only be for app admins. Okay. All right. So we need lists for status. Absolutely. So we've got request areas, request statuses, request priorities. Okay. Okay. So for each of these, the only ones going in there would be app admins. Very good. Now, usernames and passwords. What I'm going to suggest is in all the organizations that I've worked in, everybody's got their own Office 365 account. So each person's account has their own logon and password. And I'm going to suggest that we go with that assumption. Now, with the garage, mechanics aren't going to want to Office 3. They're not going to be sending out emails and have their own PowerPoint and Excel and Word and everything. So they're not going to have an office. So in that case, in that application, I made a kiosk type of thing. And if you look at this other application, this ticketing system, they set this up so that many people could use it on one person's account, like a kiosk. So if you want an example of that, I don't think I'm going to go that direction with this application. I wouldn't recommend it. There's a lot of issues with that because there's a lot of things that you need to know about Power Apps, how to use the user function that gives you a person's full name, email address, and photo. Well, you want to pull in that user information and utilize those functions, and you're not going to get that with a kiosk user. And it's going to involve a lot more work that doesn't necessarily pertain to a ticketing system. If you want to know how to do that, you can check out my work order system I did for the garage. I have a whole playlist there. But so I won't be including that. And also, you need to really be careful about storing passwords, especially in a SharePoint list where people can get at it. You don't want people to get at other people's passwords, of course, right? All right. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Status, priority. I'm definitely using that. All right. So let's look at here. We got, okay, ticket types. Okay. What are the ticket types that they have? Okay. Let's go over here. We have 8 different ticket types, all tickets, new tickets. Okay. So that is the over here. These are the ticket types. I don't know that I want to manage that, make that data driven. I would probably have that static because, like, what are they going to, you want to have them on the fly, add these things like, okay, tickets older than a week or whatever. Well, we can define all that, but I don't see any upside to making that data driven. Um, because there will probably be different coding, different filter statements based on each one, and that would have to be added later on. So All right. So, uh, Ramesh, how do I send notifications to assignee or escalate to manager if any ticket crosses its SLA? Well, you brought up a great topic here. SLA. So SLA stands for Service Level Agreement, if I'm not mistaken. And what that is there's a policy for an organization or for a department. Um, and it's like, hey, there's a rule. It's like every ticket that comes in needs to be met and fixed or whatever within a week or a month, or you have to call up the customer. Hey, we received your ticket. You just need a new laptop. Well, you have to get approval for that. It's going to take this long or whatever. Perhaps the SLA is just based on you getting back to them. Okay. So that is something else that should be a part of our requirements. Okay. And I'm gonna put in here just so we know about it. And we can always go back and reference. I want to say service level agreement. Okay. And I'm not sure that I would make the service level agreement data driven. How do I send notifications? Okay, well, sending notifications is going to be quite easy, and we'll talk about that. We'll go into that. Okay, but what we'll be using here, what I'm going to recommend that we use is the Office 365, um, the Outlook 365. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to go into the application. This is probably the application I'll be using here. And I'm going to go in here and say add data. You can add a new connector. Okay. Office 365 Outlook. That is the one that you'll use to send an email. Okay. An email notification. Now, in order to send out text, I touched on that a little bit before. We could add that. Okay. To this, and especially the mobile app. I like to tie into that SMS for the phone. Okay. So we've got all kinds of fun stuff to do, guys. So I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited as I am to build out this application. Okay, to escalate to the manager. Okay, so yeah, we need to build that in. I'm trying to think. Okay, so this brings up another. I want to thank you, Ramesh. This is a great thing to go over. So we go over the entities. Let's talk about things that you need to get here. Identify the word should. Okay. So, for example, if your client, your customer is like, listen, all tickets should be closed, or all all customers should be called back within 24 hours from the time that ticket was created. Okay. So what you want to do is we need to list these off business, if I can spell business rules. Okay. This SLA, it's not really an entity. It's more like a business rule. This is something that we need to build in, logic that we need to build in and take account for. We might have some logic in our screens to actually account for those things. Okay. And that also goes into business rules. Let's also put processes here. Okay. So SLA. Very good. And Ramesh is right. Very good. Thanks for the input. The challenge is if a ticket crosses SLA at say 608, there's no way I can send notifications at 608 sharp. Well, what you would be doing, you would probably need to set off a Power Automate flow, and you would need that Power Automate flow to send off, let's say, an email alert an hour before it crosses that SLA. Okay. So let's say it doesn't happen exactly at that second, as long as it happens, it might be 15 minutes before. Send off an email. It might send off an email to a whole group within the department. Like, hey, this ticket is about to blow up. That's what they call it a lot of times in IT. Hey, this thing's about to blow up. You better handle that. And people get upset or they get disciplined or they get in trouble based on these SLAs. They are huge, guys. If you don't currently work within IT, or deal with ticketing requests like this, SLAs are a big deal. So it's pretty much an agreement that the IT department or even a company has with its customers, clients, or the other departments. And like, I'm the IT department. I'm here to fill your needs, and I'm always gonna. If you need something from me, I'm at least gonna get back to you within an hour or within 24 hours, in which you submit a request. And if the request can't be filled within 7 days, then I'm going to give you a reason why, and that is the service level agreement. Maybe it's a whole contract. Okay, but there's going to be business rules, there can be logic, sort of the business processes defined within that SLA that's sort of going to drive how the application needs to be built. And perhaps we would build in an SLA, and then we would store the SLA, let's say the time required to call back, time, the general time required for something to happen. Okay, and what we would do over here is we would say over here in the databases, for the application, we say application settings. Okay, so one setting we can have for the application, we have a little SharePoint list database table that will hold, dynamically hold. It might change from different deployments, different organizations, what the SLA agreement for calling back or fulfilling the ticket, and we can hold that in the application settings. Okay, very good. Thanks for that. Okay, so um, we are getting close to 2 hours here, and 2 hours seems to be a sweet spot for these live streams. I just want to make sure now. I want you guys, so your guys' homework. I'm gonna type this up here. What are you guys gonna do before next week? Before the next live stream? I'm gonna expect you guys to finish out all the requirements. And perhaps I've done most of the work for you, and that's fine. Are you going to build any more functionality than what I'm doing? Well, that needs to be specified in your document. If you're part of the course, you're part of the insiders group, and I come in and maybe do something like a group tutoring session, or maybe the only person there, and I need to help you out with your situation, and you're sort of stuck in your application. You don't know how to create a screen or design the screen that's going to handle a situation in your application. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask that you send me your documentation here so I can fully understand what it is you're trying to do. Okay, these documents, the documentation is very good for communication. In the business world, pretty much any type of application you do, it's really important. Um, so I'd recommend that you be in the habit of doing these. Okay, so that is if you ask me for help, that's what I'm going to ask you. It's like, okay, this seems like this deviates from what we're doing on the live stream or what I've shown in the course. So show me your documentation so I can look at it. Okay, so I'm trying to think of any other database. Of course, we're going to have a lot of database tables. Let's try to identify some more here, though. We got priorities. I think we have that. Create a new ticket. We got the subject description. So these are fields. Okay, we got the priority, the area. Okay, so let's talk about the user. Okay, so what I recommend, um, it it fills two needs. It does two things for us. In SharePoint, you can create a people picker, which is okay. Um, they're very hard. If you create a people picker, it's not terribly difficult, but it's not very straightforward and it's not very easy to work with. You can create a people. So, for example, let me open up SharePoint here, and let's say I were to add a new column here, and I said a person. This could be a person, and I said person assigned or person requested or whatever. Say person or group. You know, um, essentially what you want to get at is their name and their email address. And then in Power Apps, you can use the users 365 to look up any other information. So why complicate it more than that? So a lot of times in my applications, what I do is I have a place for a name, like let's say person assigned name, person assigned email. And perhaps there'll be like a one-to-many relationship on that because the ticket can be assigned to 12 different people until it gets closed. So you want to keep track of all those moves, okay? Um, but what I do when I have a people picker, I keep track of the name and the email address. Now, the email address is really needed because it's sort of unique within the organization. Um, and then the name, because a lot of times, if you want to show that in a report or show something on a label, you're not wanting to show somebody's email address, okay? And given those two things, as long as you're adding both of those to anything that it needs to go into, um, that you don't have to do a lot. You don't have to go do the lookup just for somebody's name. And if you want to see if a name equals something within a gallery, then you didn't capture the name, then you might have delegation problems. So I'm going to recommend you build this in a certain way that's going to be best for the long term so you don't run into any delegation issues. A lot of times, what I do is I create a listing of everybody that is using the application, and I add them to a users table. So I capture their full name, I capture their email address, I capture even their photo, just in case I want to display that in a gallery. Let's say a listing of technicians. Okay, so a lot of times users will set up their own photo within Office 365. Okay, and so you grab that out of the users function dot photo. You can grab that. So whenever somebody uses my application, a lot of times I'll set up a function, and we can go into that later in this course. And you check to see if they're in a table. So let me actually add that database table. So we have request staff. Okay, so we could have a table called staff, and we could have them in there. Okay. And I check to see if they're in there. If they are not in there and they're using the app, well, I'm going to add them. I'm going to add in those three things. And then I could have some other fields like staff type and whatever. Okay. And then trying to think what else we have here. Okay. So created by. So as someone has brought up, you could have somebody calling up to create the ticket for someone else. Let's say an admin assistant of a manager is calling or emailing or entering a ticket for the boss, for the head guy that doesn't have time to do the ticket. So we need to be able to pick that other person, not just grab the SharePoints created by field. Maybe that created by field is actually being created by the help desk, the service desk staff, and you don't want that. You want a field that says, okay, this request was done, created by this person or for this person. The ticket is created for this person. So that person needs to be notified or whatever. Okay. Okay. So I'm just looking for other information of stuff that we need in here for database tables. Okay. Okay. Now, let me because this isn't really a traditional app that we're building for somebody, whatever, you'd want to fully define this and talk to the people, pull out all the details. And I want to get into Power Apps and build something with you guys. Okay, so let's do some of this. So the core thing that we want to do here is the request. Okay, so let's go. um you know what, I need a new SharePoint site here. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say SharePoint. Okay, I need to create a new site. Do I want a team site? No, I don't want this to be a team site. Let's just say communication site. So that would be a site that's created for teams. I'm fairly certain of that. Site name, we will call this Power Apps Bidding System. Okay, so I'm going to click finish. We'll have ourselves a new SharePoint site that will just take a moment. Okay, so if you don't work in IT, if you don't have full access within your tenant, you might have to contact your IT department and say, hey, I need a new SharePoint site called this. Please make me the site owner. So you can create all your lists and everything. Okay, so within this site, I can go into site contents is what I want to go into. That's going to show me all of my lists. Okay, so I'm going to create a new list here, blank list, and we'll call this request. I expect you guys to all be doing this. All right. Because if you guys have any problems here, I want to help you guys here on the air. Okay, so request that's created. Okay. Now the title will be just the description, like, hey, I need something done. Okay. Um, let's look at, so what you want to be doing is with each of these database tables, you need to go into okay, I'm going to cut this and go down here to design the application. Okay, so that's really what step we're in. We're in designing the application now. So the homework for next week is to finish the design. Okay. All right. So we've got a service level agreement. Okay, so the screens, the database tables. So I created a request. Let's go in here and actually talk about all the fields that we want. Okay, so we have title. Okay, and every SharePoint list that you create, it always creates a title, and I recommend that you never change that, and really never change SharePoint names, because what happens is SharePoint sort of gets attached to those names. You start renaming them, and you think the new name is new title, but it really is underneath the scenes. SharePoint expects title. It's attached to that original name. And then within Power Apps, you try to say new title, and it's like, nope, that's not there. you know, I don't like to mess with that original, and it likes to be required. So sometimes I'll just throw in some information that's just a general description of that item. If it's has to do with like a person, I'll throw in maybe their full name. If I want it to be unique, I'll put in a date timestamp by using the function now within Power Apps. Okay, so we're going to have title in there. And so we need to decide, perhaps we'll put in the original short description of request with a timestamp, because I like to make the title unique, and we could have a short description, or you could call this subject of request. Okay. Now that doesn't mean we'll require the users to type it twice. We'll just grab it out of the subject and throw it in there with date time stamp. Okay, so we have subject. We have the body of the request, a long description. Okay, let's go look over at this application here to get details. So we've got subject, description. Okay, so those are those two fields there. Now the created date, that will be automatically created for us by SharePoint. The ID will be as well. We have close date. Created by will be handled by, there will be a field called created by, okay, and the creation date. But we probably want to create our own. Okay. So, all right, let's handle that over here. Requester. And what we're going to say is in parentheses, because this can get a little confusing. Okay. So the person who is the point of contact. Okay. And then we have person affected by completion. Okay, so for example, and for each of these, we want to capture the full name and email. And same thing for here. So let's say there's a man, like an executive, okay, and he's like his secretary's name is Sally, or it might be Bob. It's like, hey Bob, create a ticket for me. I really need a new laptop, and I need it before my trip next week. So the person affected, the would be the executive, but the person actually filling out the ticket would be the requester, okay, and they will be the point of contact, and they'll be doing all the communication with the IT department or whatever department. And then, so perhaps both people need to be notified as the ticket progresses. Okay. So we might want to capture both of those pieces of information. Okay. All right. So what other information do we have here? Okay. Internal comments. So this is great. We have internal comments. So this is for like only IT staff would see this. Okay, internal comments. And what this will be a this will actually be a separate table. Okay, we'll say requests, comments, and we'll say request ID will be a foreign key, and that will reference up to the, because what we'll have is what we could have many internal comments, or we could have many comments in general. Some of them could be viewable by the end user, the affected party, and some of them will be viewable within the IT department. So we can keep track of that. We'll say visibility. Spell that right, visibility. Okay. Visible. We have a comment body. And we'll also have a date time stamp that will be taken care of by SharePoint. Okay. So because that will be a separate table that will link in there, it won't be a field. So we will not enter that as a field there. It will just be related. Okay. It could be displayed on the same screen. Okay. All right. What else? Status area. Okay. Request. Now, do you see these others? This request areas, request statuses, and priorities. We'll say request area ID, or we could just reference the name that's in there. Um, we could do that. I'll just say reference to this table down here. So either be the request area ID or just the request area name. Request status. Okay. Okay. Currently assigned to. Okay. And we'll have a reference to the staff table down here. So staff will have an ID. Every table that you create, SharePoint's going to create an ID for you. Same thing for the Dataverse. Okay. And then for SQL Server, you would need to create your own, and you might call it ID, you might call it something else. Okay, so just wanted to mention that everything will have ID. And in here we'll have name, email, so on and so forth. Okay. And we might create another table here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to have a related table for requests. We'll call this request assignments. Okay, so as we know, when a request comes in, it can be assigned to level 1 support. They can't handle it, goes to level 2, so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll keep track. Of course, I'll have an ID. It will have a staff ID, a reference to the staff. It would have a like a when assigned. And perhaps comments associated with that assignment. Okay. And just FYI, we could probably merge these two so that any assignment, if a request is assigned, it's actually sort of a comment. Hey, this was assigned. Okay. Perhaps merged with. Now, let me ask you guys a question. What do you guys think of how I'm essentially designing the database here with you guys? Okay. Is this something that you guys know plenty about? do you guys understand how to create a relational database like this? Does this all make sense? Is this all like beginner information to you? Or would you guys like a little session on, hey, this is how relational databases are built. This is how you create, relations. This is how you set things up. I mean, we're going to go through all that. I just want to make sure I'm not glibbing, running over something quickly where I need to spend more time explaining. All right. So Geraldo said request ID. Okay. So yes. So if I create an ID over here in SharePoint, it creates an ID for you. That's the unique key, the unique identifier. So a ID for request, instead of calling it request ID, it's just going to be called ID. And that's how I build out my even a SQL Server database. An ID will always be the primary key or the ID for that entity. Now, if you see over here a request ID, that is always going to be a named ID. That's going to be a foreign key. That's going to be a reference, a cross reference in another table that's going to link back to the other table. Okay. All right. So Jason said, I'm learning a lot. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. Thanks for stopping by, guys. I'm really glad to see so much turnout. I've watched the number of viewers come in and out. And a lot of times, whenever YouTube sort of notice a lot of people sticking around and watching for a lot of time. And if you've stuck around the whole time, thank you so much. It actually helps the channel, helps the videos, and YouTube will actually push out that video to a lot more people. So, and so also it looks at how many likes and how much involvement is in the comments. So I appreciate every comment that I have in the chat and also in the comments after this has gone live. Okay. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate you guys. And I hope you guys all join the insiders group. Okay. So, so we've done quite a bit of the database design here. Okay. I would like to just add a little bit of stuff here. Let's add in, well, we do have request status. I was going to say, oh, add a column here that says complete, but that would be shown in the request status. Okay. How can you create relational database in SharePoint? I would use Access as the back end. Okay. Well, you know what? You can't talk to an Access database from SharePoint. Okay. So there's a little bit of you know, I don't know. The answer is yes, no. There is no Access, Microsoft Access connector within Power Apps. And they've stated that in the past that they are dropping support for Access in the Office cloud environment. Okay. And it freaked a lot of people out. They thought that Microsoft was saying they were going to support Access, which wasn't the case. So at one of my past employers, as the developer, like, hey, Darren, we got all these Access databases. You need to replace all these with applications. And I'm like, listen, it might be a good idea to replace these Access applications. It's fine, but Microsoft doesn't drop in support for Access. There is no Access connector. How you can so the thing is, Access is a weird thing. It does a lot. It's actually a really cool tool if you think about it, because Access is a front end. You can create a user interface with it, some data entry screens, all kinds of different screens you can create, UI. You've got macros and processes. You got VBA code you could have in there. You've got reports. You have your database tables. You have local tables. You can connect to ODBC external sources like SQL Server, all kinds of stuff. So an Access database, you almost have to define what you mean by that. So like if you're to use Access as the backend. So Microsoft has created a new feature, you could call it the Access integration feature with Power Apps. And what that is, it's not a connector. You can't just create a front end that's going to talk to a Access backend. No, that's not possible. Okay. So what if you look into anything that says, oh yeah, use your Access database or use your Access data from SharePoint? You know what that video is going to show you? That video is going to show you how you can import your local Access data, not data in a SharePoint. It's like if you have Access local data, is to import it into more than likely the Dataverse or SharePoint or SQL Server. Okay. Now the new feature that Microsoft added is you can run your Access database through this feature, and you can export the data into Dataverse, and you can still use the Access front end to talk to that Dataverse data. And then you can create a Power Apps application that talks to that Dataverse data. So in that regard, you feel like you're using Access, really using Dataverse as a backend. And in a lot of cases, if you have your front end in Power Apps, you really don't perhaps need the front end. Now, if the Access application has a lot of screens and you're taking a while to build out that Power Apps application, you're taking your time to do it. Perhaps that feature is ideal for exactly what you need. Okay, but as far as I'm building a Power, now data is king. If you're talking about something that I haven't discussed, let me know how. If you're connecting to an Access database as a backend from Power Apps, please let me know. But I have never seen that. There is no Access connector. Okay, so that doesn't mean that you could create your own custom connector and do all kinds of programming work and set something up that would eventually make it back to the Access database. I mean, essentially nothing is impossible, right? But if you ever wonder, like, hey, I've got some Access data out here or an Access application, and I want my Power Apps application to get to that Access application that's data. Um, as you would call it, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's not. You need to rethink what you're doing. You need to import that data and then access it that way. And perhaps perhaps I can link to that new feature that was in preview for a few months. They um, announced it last year at Ignite of 2021 about this new feature in which you can integrate with Access. And if you heard about the feature, you'll be like, oh, I could use Power Apps and Access together. Sort of, but not really. Again, you're importing that data into Dataverse, and both the Access front end and the Power Apps front end are connecting to that Dataverse data. So hopefully that sort of I don't know that you were. How can you create relational? Okay, so to answer your question, data is king. What you do is you create these SharePoint lists here within. Okay, so this is the back and this SharePoint list here for this particular help desk system. And here's on the list. So what you do, you can create a lookup column. I don't recommend that because you can run into some delegation problems. Now, data is king. I think maybe you came in on my other live streams. If I go over here into the live stream for my live stream list, let me go back. I have a Northwind Traders database. So I took an old Access database called the Northwind Traders. If you look at these icons here, I took an Access database and I had to import the data, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't very simple and straightforward, but I accomplished it. And then we built a Power Apps application on it. And then we put the data in SharePoint because SharePoint is used by 70% of the people out there in the field. So what you do, and so what I did in this is I tried to maintain everything they had in that Access database. I created everything, all those relationships with lookup fields. And I don't normally do that. And even doing it this way, I used forms and I used lookups because I never do it that way. And I thought, hey, maybe I just need to push myself and maybe learn something new. And I did that and I regretted it. So how I'll be building my application is by, so how do you create these foreign keys? Okay, so we have our thing here. So let's say we had let me just use something that already has data here. We have tickets and ticket types. So in ticket, okay, so here's all the tickets in this list, okay? Over here in ticket types, we got all these ticket types, okay? Now let's say these, I don't know. Let's say we want for the tickets. I don't know that we have a ticket type ID, but this is how I would create a foreign key column that references that ticket type. Okay, I would go over here, add a column, and I would not add a lookup. I would add a numeric field, and I'll call this ticket type ID. Okay, and what I would put in this ID would be a numeric value is inside the application. I would go over, and when they selected a certain type, I would go in here, show hide columns, and add this ID. Every SharePoint list is going to have an ID. So here's an ID. It's like an auto number if you're familiar with Access. Okay, it's called identity if you use SQL Server. So it's an auto number here. So it generates the ID. I would grab this number, and then over there in the tickets, I would throw that number into the uh, ticket type ID. Okay. And then that would be the relationship. And inside of Power Apps, as you're filtering and you're doing things, you would filter based on certain IDs. Okay. So I'm going to bring up data is king here. He's got another comment. I'm using a local access database and connecting it to a SharePoint list. Those lists are then connected to my Power App. I don't have access to Dataverse. Okay. All right. So that whole, that's sort of what I was doing with the Northwind database. I mean, I didn't have the Northwind screens talking to SharePoint list, but yeah. So that is actually a cool setup that you have there. So you have the access front end talking to SharePoint as a backend. So essentially you're just using a SharePoint backend, and then you have some access front end. So absolutely, yeah, your access can connect to all kinds of stuff. It's sort of cool, to be honest. It's a little impressive. And then so thanks for sharing that. Data is king. Um, yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, sort of. So I mean, it goes to show you, as far as in using Power Apps, it connects to access. You're not really connecting to access. You're connecting to something that the access was imported to, and then the access could still connect to it, either Dataverse or SharePoint. You could, put that data over in a SQL Server, right? And then you could have your Power Apps connect to SQL Server, and then your access connect to SQL Server. So that's sort of cool. If you have a lot of access databases, that's probably a good move. Okay. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so that's how I would set up the foreign key stuff. Now I want to at least finish up this live stream with doing a little bit of Power App stuff. Don't you guys? All right, so I just at least want to add in two fields. Okay, so I've got like a subject line. Let's do a body. Let's at least add that. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here, and I'm gonna subject and body. For the subject will be single line of text. We'll say subject, single line of text. Okay. And then for any SharePoint list that I'm working with, I always like to go in here and always add that ID, move it to the top. So whenever I'm looking at this data, I always see that at least. Okay, I'm going to apply that. And you see there's a bunch of other, do you guys see that? Look at all these other fields that SharePoint adds for you. Okay. Attachments, and created by, modified by, all that type of stuff. Okay, so we got title, subject. Let's add in a body. This is going to be multiple lines of text. And I'm always going to suggest, when people do multiple lines of text, don't do the rich text editor. You can still use a rich text editor on the front end within Power Apps, but I recommend not doing it on the back end. A lot of div tags and things get added where you don't want them there. And I don't know. Let me go into all options here. See this use enhanced rich text? Leave that off. Okay. So I'm going to hit save. So we've got that. And I just want to keep things simple right now. Now, I expect you guys to fully build this out and at least build out your request. I need you to completely sort of fill out your documentation, especially if you have anything different than what I have here. And to be honest, I'm probably going to work on this before the next session as well. And I'll show you all my additions and what I've done. We can sort of compare notes. And I'd like to bring some of you on, for those of you who are in the insiders group, is I like to bring some of you guys on and show me what you've built and answer any questions, especially if any of you are stuck or having any problems. Making sure nobody's sort of left behind on a certain lesson, or sort of stuck and can't move on. Okay, so I've added at least those three fields. Okay, and we do have created by and stuff. We'll get to add more stuff, but I at least want to have some data in here. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to suggest you could create a brand new application from scratch. I'm going to be using my application shell. Okay. Now, if you want to use an application shell like I have, and you have no interest in purchasing mine, I'm completely fine with that. Okay. What I'm going to suggest is that you go over to my playlist Okay, I mentioned this previously in the live stream. Go over how to create your own app template. Okay, and this would probably take an afternoon, a day to sort of go through. And a lot of these are like 15 to 20 minutes long. So there's eight different videos here. And then the last one shows you how to show it. So if you purchase my template, that will definitely show you how to use all the features that I have in there, but it actually shows you as you build in all these features, how to utilize and take most advantage of each of them. Okay. So there's a lot of really good. So it's like, or you could just implement just a few of these. So if you're really interested in the dynamic theming, or to create your own theme in there, I've got that. If you're definitely going to need a menu. Okay, because you can have a lot of screens. You need to be able to navigate throughout your application. Your users going to be need to be able to navigate. You need to have some type of application header at the top. Okay, you can let me show you maybe things you can get away with. The spinner, that's a nice to have. I mean, it's a 10-minute video. That'd be nice to have in there. But I mean, you don't have to have a spinner. But if you want some type of animation to happen while they're waiting for something to happen, it's sort of nice. Um, you need some way of having security in there. So I don't want this class to be a regurgitation of all these other videos on my channel. You know what I mean? So I'm going to direct you guys here to build out your own application shell. Okay. So I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. I use all these features in almost every single application that I build. Okay. So you definitely want to do that. Fill out your homework, all your documentation here. Okay. So I'm going to be working from my application here, my application shell. So I'm going to do a publish. This is my application shell, my very latest, and I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to call this Power Apps Tutorial Dash Thing System. And I might want a space before and after the dash. In your environment, you just might want to call it ticketing system. Okay, so I'm going to create this by doing a save as. And Intuit Nicole, just by the template, if you want to save hours, saves Darren. So this, by the way, guys, this is Intuit Nicole. She's my wife, and she's my marketing department, and she owns 49% of my business. And she's done some intros for some of my videos for the application template and stuff. But yeah, that's true. It saves me up to 30% of time. It saves me tons of time. And if you don't have the money or you don't want to give me any money, that's completely fine. Just build your own. And if you end up purchasing the course in the future, I will be including this template in the course. Okay. So, and if you have purchased the template, you'll get a discount on the course. Okay. Join the insiders group. More information to come. Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole. All right. So we've got the ticketing system here. And here's a question for you guys. If you guys want to give me some input, what color scheme should we go with for our ticketing system here? Now I've got a blue theme. I really like this a lot, but I feel like I've overused it. The green theme isn't so pretty. We have a red theme now. We use that with the garage application we built here on the channel, so I won't be going with red. I don't care for earth very much. There's pond. And if you guys are curious how I got all these color themes, there is there was a color theme that was used by one of the organizations, government organization, state of Florida, that had all these as a public record. Hey, if you want to build an app for the state of Florida or the agency I was working for, it's like these are the color schemes you have to use. So it's not a secret or anything. I sort of like this dashboard theme. Okay. Nicole said, "No, give me money." LOL. That's funny. Yeah, so if you guys buy the template, I'll be able to take my wife out for a date night tonight. How about that? All right. So I think I would like to use this one. So in order to use this one, I'm going to go in and make some edits. And Nicole says yes. And she says, I like that one. So, by the way, Nicole is a designer. So, if you think that a lot of the things I create look really nice, it's because my wife has come into the room and said, no, don't do it that way. Do it this way. She helps me with my YouTube video thumbnails and make sure that they're looking nice. So she helps me out a lot. All right, so I'm going to go to the app on start. And as you can see, we've got the application template here. I've got lots of documentation. I describe all the variables I'm using. Okay. What I need to do is I need to go get the name. So these are all my themes that are predefined. Now you can go and modify these, add your own. Power Apps Purple. And I think what this one was called was Dashboard Theme, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to take that title. This is like a unique identifier, like a key name. And up here in the application settings, I have a theme key. Yeah, it's called a theme key. So I'm going here and paste that there. And then what I'll do is I'll hit run on start. Okay. And it sort of sets that up. So every time the application starts, it will have that theme. Okay. So if I go home, there we go. And something else I want to do is get rid of Mary T. Smith. Okay. So what I do for this little application shell is a lot of times you want to build out an app, but you don't want your personal information there. I mean, my name's out here on this channel. You guys know who I am, and you guys know what my email address is. So I really don't care at this point. But if you were just demoing an app, you may not want that. So I have this little demo mode. So I'm going to set this demo mode. That is actually a setting I have set up here. Here at the top, it's set to true. So I'm going to just set that to false now. Okay. So now if I rerun this, it should actually show me up there. Isn't that cool? Very good. Now let's add our new SharePoint list. Add data, connectors, SharePoint. And Power Apps Service Desk. And we've got tickets. Wait, I don't know if that's the right one because I have this other SharePoint Service Desk. We have Power Apps ticketing system. So what I do is a lot of times I click on this link with my middle mouse button and I'll just grab this name here just to make sure I have the right one. I have so many tabs open, gee whiz. I'll just paste the link to the site there, hit connect, and then I know I'm on the, the right site. I'll click on request. I'm going to add that in there. Okay. So, all right. So let's do something here. Typically for the home screen, I like to have that be like a splash screen. If that makes any sense. So let's say you've got 50 different Power Apps applications out there for the organization, and they click on a link and they go to this application. I like to have a splash screen just sort of showing an image, showing them where they're at so they know that they're in the right spot. Okay. So a lot of times I don't like to have too much information. I just want to have a nice little graphic there. So for this example, I might put in here, let's see, got a thumbnail somewhere here. I think I'm going to add that one. So I'm going to copy and paste here on the other screen. I'm going to call this GRA. I like to prefix all my graphics that I import into my my project with a GRA. Okay, GRA, I'll say splash screen. And the reason for that, hopefully you'll see that here. So this application template already has some graphics here. As you can see, I have my own little radio buttons that I think look a lot better than the Power Apps radio buttons. Okay, and some other things. I'm going to upload that, and I'm going to pull that up here and select the right directory and everything. Okay. And very good. So this is actually sort of the thumbnail I use for this video. Okay. And we can mess around with fill or fit or stretch. Okay, we can do something like that. We could do something like that. I like to have a little bit more of a border. Okay, to make it look nice. If I go over, so I've got a screen within my application shell. It's called copy controls from here. So if there's any controls, and also you can test the spinners. I sort of like that feature. If you click on the debugging feature, it's got this little 20 by 20 little square there that I can pull over. Yeah, it's 20 by 20. I'm going to copy that and bring it over here. And there's two things that are sort of set. So it's the exact dimensions 20 by 20. It's a square. I know that. And also it has its visible property set to a variable that's tied into my little toggle button here for testers. So only testers would be able to see that. Okay. Or if you're just sort of developing the application, you know what I mean? So I would want one of these for each of the corners. And this sort of is a guideline. So as I'm building out an application, I know that my spacing is good without trying to eyeball it, you know? So I'm going to move that over there, move one down here, and then one over here. So there's a shortcut here, guys. If you hit Control 0, boom, it zooms out perfectly. Control 0. I need to zoom in a little bit. But it's a shortcut I use a lot because sometimes you zoom in to do one thing and then you're like, okay, now I need to zoom out without using that slider. It's a lot faster. Okay, so Control 0, boom. And now I will just sort of move this little graphic to these guidelines here. And then I run it and I turn that little toggle off. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad. So now if you go here, you know what application you're on. And you know what's sort of cool is see these blue aqua colors. It sort of ties in with some of the tint and the shadow colors within the graphic. So I thought that was sort of cool. I didn't plan that. All right, so there's that. Okay, let's go over here to I've got different screens. I've got a thing called a home or a new screen. We could use that. Let's just go with a blank screen for now, just in case you guys aren't using any template. You haven't had the chance to build your own template. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this screen that's already has my menu and my application, all my other stuff already in there. And I'm going to, you know what I want to make sure is I have those because I sort of want those little squares to be on every screen. So I'm gonna snag those for the four corners. So they're there on every screen, just in case I need it for anything. I'm gonna delete the thing that I just created real quick. And I'll paste them here. Okay, very good. Now I'm gonna duplicate this. All right, so there we go. Now I'm gonna move this blank screen up. Okay, what are we gonna call this screen? Well, this is gonna be, if we look over here, one of our first screen is we need a request input. Okay, now what I want the user to see is maybe request, submit request screen. That's what we'll call it. And I'll hit Control 0 to zoom out. I'll click on home. So you see it says a blank screen 1. I'm going to click on home screen and then click back. Okay, very good. And what I want to do here is provide a nice, easy way to input a request. Okay, so I'm going to click on the plus. I'm going to add over a rectangle. Now, something I could do, instead of inserting things over from the menu, what I recommend doing, if you have a template, you have this screen out here called copy controls from here. I'm going to use, I could use one of these over here. Something like this primary light color. And I use it as a background as they're typing in something new. Sometimes I'll just go with like a different shade of gray, but let's go with primary light for now. I'm gonna copy that. Okay, video demo screen is not what I wanted. I'm gonna go here. I paste that. I'm gonna center this, probably make it a little bigger. Okay, now this won't be what we'll end up with, but I at least wanted to show you guys us getting something done within the application. So perhaps make that part of your homework for next week is develop this first screen. This is the screen that is going to be used most out of everything in the application. Okay. So now I need some text boxes and some labels. So here's a label. Here's a text box. And maybe we'll add in a button. Okay, I'm going to copy that, go back over here, paste that. Okay. So instead of using a form, you guys might have experience using forms. You might like forms. If you like forms, hey, and they work well for you, I'd say continue using them. I've never really liked forms very much, and I've found that they cause a lot of problems. So, and I've gone into that in a lot of my videos, so I won't rehash all that. Now, what I think would look nice is if we had a border on this rectangle, and then for border color, we can tie into our theme by say var theme primary dark. Okay, we could do that, sort of tie it all together there. All right, so request subject line. Okay, and I might make this a lot bigger, like 300. I'll zoom in and make sure everything is aligned and looks good here. Now, sometimes what I'll do is, see these little squares here? I'll actually use these all over the place. I'll put it inside here. So this little label, I doubt everybody is as sensitive to alignments and everything, but building applications over the years, it really bothers me if things aren't aligned and spaced out right. And I think in some cases it makes your application look much more professional if everything is aligned and spaced out right. So I always take the time to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up to be so long here. Let's say something like 500 or maybe even 600. That's good. And then copy and paste that one. Okay, that one was messed up. Let's copy this one here. Very good. All right, so what fields do we have defined? We have title. We'll be setting that automatically. We have subject and body. That is it. That's all that we're going to do for now. Unless you guys have any questions about how to do something. So keep in mind, you guys are going to build out this screen quite a bit before our next session, okay? So there's going to be more fields that need to be added, okay? Some, foreign keys and some other stuff here. So for requests, you're going to be adding all these fields in your SharePoint list and adding all the fields on the screen, okay? So a lot of times what I'll do is if it's the same type, like a text box, whatever, I will copy this. I'll bring it up under here and I'll just use my down arrow key once and request. I'll say full request description. Okay. Now for the text box, I want that to be multi-line. That would make sense, right? Move this down a little bit. And now the padding doesn't seem consistent. So the left is 12. Let's make top like 10. We'll make the bottom 10 and the right 10. A little more consistent there. Okay, so those are the only two fields that we've defined there. So what we will do, okay, I'm gonna add these two little squares here down below. So I know exactly where to put the button. All right, so then I can size this down. Now we'll be adding a lot more. So this will be, things will be moving around quite a bit. So what's great about Power Apps is it's a low code, some people would say no code environment. So building up prototypes is very easy in Power Apps. Okay, so instead of me using a tool like Balsamic or some other like Figma or something to do design out the UI, if you're already really fluent with Power Apps, why not sort of design it, sketch it out, and then show the users the pretty much what you built as a prototype. Say, hey, there's no code behind this, nothing is saving, but this is what I was thinking for the design. Do you guys like that? So if you're to show them this and say, submit request, well, of course, this needs to be wider. So let's say 250 here. All right. And you send them a sketch of the screen or a screenshot of the screen. I'm like, oh, well, we also want to input, we might allow the user to say, well, this is a very high priority type of thing. Okay. Um, the status should be set automatically. Okay. All right. So in the submit request for the on select, we can do a patch. Now, my application already has this thing that will turn the spinner on and off. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say patch. And what we've called this, we call it what, request. I do sort of like to, especially within SharePoint, like to prefix all my list names with TBL. So if you like that idea, go ahead and do that. Sometimes with working with Dataverse, I've been doing a lot of work in Dataverse lately and trying to build out some model-driven stuff. And it doesn't lend itself well to a model-driven application. So because I've been doing a lot of work in Dataverse, I've been trying not to do that in there. And also, if you're working with other developers like, what's up with a TBL thing, But I mean, if you're a Power Apps developer, you're probably used to doing some type of TBL or some prefix, so you can get a nice of like for this request. I didn't remember exactly what the name of it was. If I hit TBL, I could have got a full listing of all my tables or my SharePoint lists, which is nice. Okay, so you can patch requests. Okay, there it is. And if we're adding a new record, which we are, so whenever they come to the screen and enter a new request, it's always going to be a new record. Okay, so in order to do that, what we're going to do, I'm going to copy the name of that data source, and we'll use a function called defaults. And inside that, we will name that off. Now I'm going to hit this format text to sort of indent and format it a little better so we can see it a little better. Okay, and then the third parameter for patch is going to be the fields. Okay, so you want to make sure you include that title. Okay, now that title, we probably should rename our little fields here. So this is text input 1.4. We can call this txt. I like to put some callback to the name of the screen that we're currently on when we name our controls, so there's no conflicts between the screens. So let's say submit request subject. Okay. And then copy that portion of the name. Go down here, use that prefix there and say body. Okay. So now for my button, I can say TST subject text, and then I can append on here dash and also the date and time. Okay. And then we have the subject line, txt submit subject.text. And then for body, txt body. Sometimes whenever I write a lot of code, your patch statements, they could be a really long listing of fields. A lot of times just to make things look cleaner, I'll hit tab over here for these control names. Make sure everything lines up. It looks a lot prettier as if you have a lot of code that you're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control S to save that. Okay, I'm going to run it, and let's try this. Now, of course, this text input, there shouldn't be anything in here, so we'll take that out. And for the hint text, we might say brief description Brief description of request. And here for full, I'll say detailed description of request. We'll run it. I need a new laptop before my trip on July 1st. Okay. The full description is I need a laptop with a fast and dedicated video card. I must have this before my departure, date of July 1st. Okay, and any other details. Okay, so what I'm going to do is if you add any new controls to a application shell where you have like spinners and menus, you always need to make sure your menu and your spinner is all on top of everything because we've been adding controls to the screen. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and I'm going to hit the button. Cross your fingers. Hopefully, there's no errors or any issues. Okay, now what perhaps we should do first is check to see if the data came over. I'm going to refresh this screen. Look at that. So there's the title along with the date timestamp. There's the subject, and there's the body. Okay, so we have that. We also want to make sure we can see our IDs here. Move that to the top, hit apply. So we know that it worked fine, but we need to let the user know that worked as well. So we might actually add in a success screen. Okay, we might want to do something like that, but we need to pull in perhaps some of our colors. Let's say for this circle or this icon, let me go look at that real quick. So it needs to have the same theming. Okay, there's the circle for the color. We could tie into our theming. So it's var theme, primary dark. Okay. And then what we could do is we could add a timer here. And after 3 seconds or 3,000 milliseconds, we do an auto start. And then on the timer end, what we could do is we could go back to the home screen. We could say navigate home screen. And we don't want this timer to be visible by the user unless they're a debug user. In that case, we'll say var show debugging. Okay, so we've got that. Now the name of the screen is just screen 1, but we want that to be something like request was successfully submitted. Okay. And then we could add in here with a char 13, it gives us a carriage return, a new line. And we could say in here, in parentheses, you will be redirected to home momentarily. Okay, so we can do that. So I need another, and add something that says, yeah, I actually need 2 of them. Okay, so now, but under this button, I don't navigate over to that screen. Okay, that screen is still called screen 1. We can say request submitted. Okay, I'm going to go in there and grab the name of that. And then up here at the top, after I hit Control 0, I can go into that button and I can do a navigate right away. Navigate. All right, so let's try this again. Let's click on the button again. We're going to submit this new request. It's going to go here, and after 3 seconds, it goes back home. How do you like that? Now, question is, how do we from here? How do we get the users to be able to get to that submit screen? So we can add, go in here, reorder, bring to front, go to the spinner group. We make sure the spinner's on top. Very good. Um, and for this new screen, instead of, I mean, that new screen just goes to like just a little screen that has some controls on it. We want to change that up a little bit. Let's grab the name of this screen, go into home, and I'm going to try to zoom out a little bit here because it seems really big. Okay. The menu is defined down here. So it says new screen. We're actually going to make that go to that new screen we created. And instead of new screen, we'll say submit new request. Okay. Now I am going to save this and I'm going to run it. And then whenever somebody comes to the screen, I almost want these controls to be reset back to their default value, which are empty strings. Okay. So up here in the screen, I'm going to go to action on visible. And I already have a statement here to patch. So I sort of track the users using the application and I put that into a collection or even a data source called screen use. So I know who the users are that are using the application, how often they're using it, which screens they're using the most. I can do some analytics and some metrics based on that. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to reset txt on the subject. And then also the body. Okay, very good. So now if I go back home, okay, I need to make sure that my app on start is rerun. Okay, because that actually updates my menu system here. Say submit new request. And then sometimes on the home screen, you might want to say, have a button here that, or even like a timer, like what is the user doing looking at a home screen exactly, right? We could copy this little timer and say the default screen for a user should be the submit new request. So if they're sitting here for too long, we could sort of make them go along here. Okay. So make them go to that new screen. All right. So we say submit. So they load up the application, looking at this like, oh, I need to submit a new request. I'm not sure. Oh, that's what I need to do. What do you guys think of that? Okay. So this is what I'm thinking. I'm intentionally leaving this very bare because ultimately you guys need to be building out this application. I'm going to be building it out alongside of you. And then we meet up together on the weekends. I'd like to sort of compare notes with you guys and see what you guys have built. So join do the student intake forum, go in there and join the group. And then I'll be bringing some of you guys on. I need some volunteers, of course. So as you guys make some progress, volunteer in the group, like, hey, I'd like to be brought on the next one, or I've got a problem I need you to help me work through. And we'll actually bring you up here on the screen and we'll work through it. Okay. Very good. So that being said, let's see. Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks.